By Pastor Sheila Turner of Attention Ham Ministries, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
May we bow our heads and hearts to the Lord. We thank you, Father, for allowing us to be together one more time. And we ask, Lord, that you allow the mayor of this great city and his councilmen to make the right decisions that is suitable for this city. In Christ Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. I pledge allegiance to the
Flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will the clerk call the roll?
Councilwoman Ford.
Present.
Councilman Bastion.
Here.
Councilman Stiltner.
Here.
Vice Mayor Tremont.
Here.
Mayor Burnett.
Here. Consent agenda items. Public comments on consent agenda items only. Are there any comments on the consent agenda items? There being none, I'd like D, E, and G pulled on 7, so I need a motion to that effect if
moved.
that's possible.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any others motions on items to be pulled?
D, E, and G.
7D, E, and G.
Thank you.
With that, I need the approval for tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We have an approval for the agenda tonight, so now I need a motion for the approval of the consent agenda items that are remaining.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion, I have a second. Call the roll.
Councilwoman Ford.
Yes.
Councilman Bastion.
Yes.
Councilman Stiltner.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Tremont.
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes. We have 5-0. That brings us to 7D and 7E. Jake, these are the street lights on Dunlawton that we've been working on forever. Can you give us an update with these change orders, the timeline of what we expect?
In basic terms, if you need anything more, I can bring Tim up. But we had 5 change orders based on some difficulties, unforeseen difficulties down on the road or off the road there.
Under the road.
Under the road, right. With things not being quite as the plans had indicated they were under there. So most of the change orders are for different poles, different foundations, or different lights that need to be added or changed. There's some fees associated with those, and one of them is a different foundation. I think that's change order 5, and we're going to need about, I would say, just short of 180 days to make those changes and get those lights all up and online.
Okay. Because certainly I hope that we can learn a lot from this process. I'd love to see us replicate this at some point in time in the stretch between Clyde Morris all the way out to Williamson. Hopefully that won't take another 5 years.
Well, hopefully, and hopefully between Clyde Morris and Williamson, the as-built and the plans and the information we have on what's underground is a little more accurate than what we have in the older section of town.
Different age.
And I think you pulled the CEI as well, which is the inspection team that goes with inspecting that program.
I did.
Yes, sir. So those are kind of combined but separate.
Which is,
Yes,
is why
sir.
I pulled them together.
Yes, sir.
Can I have a motion for approval for 7D and 7E?
So moved.
Second.
Any other comments or questions on these items? There being none, call the roll.
Councilwoman Ford.
Yes.
Councilman Bastion.
Yes.
Councilman Stiltner.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Tremont.
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes, 5-0. Brings us to 7G. I pulled that one because there was a scrivener's error, and I wanted to read that for the record. While
Yes, sir.
I call that up, can somebody do me the privilege of making a motion, a second for approval of 7G?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second.
Would you like me to read it, sir?
I got it right.
You got it? All right.
The agreement with the baseball club has a scrivener's error as written by the city clerk to us this afternoon. The new partner fee should actually be 6866, not 6688. They started with a credit of $36,500 in 2014, which was deducted by $4,000 over 5 years to 2018, bringing their balance to $16,500. If the amendment is approved, we would deduct 6866 in fiscal year 19 and 20, bringing the balance to 2,768 for fiscal year 21 in the like-kind work that they're doing. We would invoice them for $4,098 in fiscal year 21, and in 22 they would pay the full rate of 6866. We meet annually with the clubs to discuss their agreements, and fees are part of this discussion. And there's an apology for the error. It's a simple, well, when we say Scrivener's error, when you transpose a number, it's as simple as that. But the point of it was to be able to properly credit the Port Orange Baseball Club for the work that they've been doing there.
And Mayor, the baseball club has indicated that they agree and have signed already the new amount.
And this, of course, is brought about because we raised the fees. So we have a motion and second on the floor. Any questions or comments on this item other than what we discussed? There being none, call the roll.
Councilwoman Ford,
Yes.
Councilman Bastian,
Yes.
Councilman Stiltner,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Tremont,
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes, 5-0. Brings us special awards, reports, recognition, proclamations. The Envirothon team and Josh Platt recognition. Nancy Vaughn is handling that. There she is. Come on up. You're smiling.
I am.
This is good
This
stuff.
is very
good
fun
stuff.
stuff. Yes. Good evening. I'm Nancy Vaughn, Vice Chair of the Environmental Advisory Board of Port Orange. Mayor Burnett, Councilman Stiltner, Councilman Bastian, Councilman Tremont, Councilwoman Ford, City Manager Johansson, and staff. Thank you so much for hosting this proclamation event for the Spruce Creek Envirothon team, the Advancing Glaciers, who won the Florida State Envirothon this spring. The Envirothon is an environmental problem-solving competition for high school students that takes place in the wild and natural areas of our state. To prepare, the team members study their areas of expertise, then also work together to develop their knowledge of ecology and natural resource management for Envirothon competition. As a member of the EAB, I am happy to introduce you to the Envirothon state-winning team: Alejandro Morales, Meryl Liu, Grace Liu, Melody Palmer, and Scott Tobin, with alternates Nami Pruitt and Chloe Horncastle. As a team, they bested 8 other schools in the county and 21 other teams in the state to earn their spot to compete in the National Envirothon. The Envirothon has been going on in Volusia County since 1998, thanks to a number of people who guided it throughout the years. Former Soil and Water Board member Susie Peace introduced it with support from Carol Johnson, Stephen Kintner, and many others at the county and state level. Louise Chapman, Volusia County Schools environmental STEM resource teacher, has been expertly indeed, has been expertly organizing and running the program for the past 5 years. The current team has had great support and guidance all along the way this year from advisors Joshua Platt and Merrick Johnson, parent chaperone Ann Tobin, sponsors Volusia County Soil and Water Ann Tobin, Louise Chapman, Spruce Creek High School principal Dr. Todd Sparger, sponsors Volusia Soil and Water Conservation District, Riverside Conservancy, Fred and Susie Peace, and the Young Bear Environmental Consulting. We are so proud to have our city, county, and state represented so very well. We also believe that they will continue the tradition of the Spruce Creek High School Environmental Program of producing leaders who will help guide decision makers to act wisely on behalf of our threatened natural world. Next, to present the proclamation, we are very fortunate to have with us tonight the County Council Vice Chair and Representative for Port Orange, the Honorable Deb Denny's. Ms. Denny's has been a champion of clean water for years and is the current chair of the Indian River Lagoon Council. She is the ideal person to honor our team with this proclamation. Councilwoman Denny's.
It looks like you got your work done in time today.
Just for you.
There you go.
Perfect.
So got it.
I told that we just left county council chambers, said I've got to close this up. City of Port Orange needs us. The kids needs us.
That's right.
They need us. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council, friends, Mr. Manager. It's good to see you. It's good to be here. I don't know, do you want to call the kids up now or we'll wait?
Yeah.
Come on up while I talk here. And
We called them in on a summer vacation. Dang right, we gotta get them up
there
here.
you go. Yes, Dr. Litowitz, please. So
Bring 'em all
what's
up.
becoming increasingly obvious is I'm getting older. Chase, stop.
We weren't going there.
Yeah, you were, so it's okay. So there's a lot of gray hair under this, but the good news with that is the next generation is rising to the task, and you're seeing that today with Spruce Creek High School and the Riverside Conservancy. We just finished the Protect Our Lagoon Week at Bethune-Cookman, again courtesy of Riverside Conservancy. They weren't all young, but we had all ages there. All week we were out on the water with that one. So this is a really good thing for us, for our generation.
Definitely.
And I know you're on the water all the time. Someday I'm going to go with you and catch something.
Get some. Not a cold.
Not a cold.
Or
No,
not seasick.
not a cold. So I have a proclamation here, and I'd like to read it. And here's what's interesting. They won the state, right? But you know, the one that came in second place, they're first. You're number one. But the ones that came in number two, you bested them by 19 points. It wasn't even close. They bested them by 19 points. And
kind
that
of a
is
lot.
a really big deal. So with that, I'm going to read this proclamation and give you each one. There's a few more, and I will let you give them to the students that aren't here. Is that okay? Okay. So, and sorry, but this is where the whereases come in. I'm going to do a hashtag whereas. Whereas Spruce Creek High School student team, the Advancing Glaciers. Isn't that a great name for somebody from Florida and the environment? The Advancing Glaciers demonstrated their in-depth knowledge of environmental issues by winning the 2019 Florida State Envirothon competition and hashtag whereas. The talented team is composed of Alejandro Morales, Grace Liu, Meryl Liu, Melody Palmer, and Scott Tobin, along with their alternates, Nami Pruitt and Chloe Horncastle, advisors Joshua Platt and Merrick Johnson, and parent chaperone Ann Tobin. And whereas environmental teacher on assignment Louise Chapman organized the team, and the Volusia County Soil and Water Conservation District sponsored it, along with the Riverside Conservancy, and whereas the team scored first place in the team oral question and wildlife category, second place in the soils and aquatics categories, and third place in the forest category, and whereas the students are advancing to the North American competition, which is sponsored by the National Conservation Foundation, and this is the last hashtag whereas, the week-long event at North Carolina State University, that's July 29th, I believe, will include intensive training, testing, and experiential learning. Now, therefore, we, the County Council of Volusia County, Florida, do hereby proclaim July 16th, 2019 as Spruce Creek Envirothon Day in Volusia County, and we urge our residents to root for the home team as they compete with teams across the United States and Canada, dated this July 16th, July AD 2019, signed by the entire Volusia County Council in your honor. So congratulations. You're number one.
Youth is served without a doubt. Council comments, why don't we let's start with the professor here.
Oh, I sort of feel somewhat responsible for all this here. Kidding.
Lightly.
I'm kidding. It's a great day to be a Hawk. Who's the guy in the orange shirt? Hey, boss. Congratulations. It's really phenomenal work. And just such a dynamic school, and this is why. Spruce Creek is the premier school in the county and the state of Florida, and one of the premier ones in the nation because of the leadership. And I don't get paid to say that anymore. But because of the students like you and the volunteers there, so well done.
Marilyn?
This may be the first that our citizens have heard your names, but I suspect it won't be the last.
Hear,
The
hear.
mark that you've set is certainly high, and I suspect we'll probably see some of you again. Thank you for representing us, and good luck in North Carolina.
Drew?
Yeah, thank you and congratulations. Obviously, in order. North Carolina's coming up, and you know, good luck there. But Spruce Creek High School has continually risen up and shined in a lot of areas, and this is just another another example of how well Spruce Creek High School does and represents Port Orange and yourselves and everything. And it's just a job well done. So you are going to be commended for this. Outstanding.
Scott?
I've had the pleasure to sit up here now for over 4 years, and I can honestly say that one of the greatest things that I have learned and been blessed to experience is to get a better understanding of how good the asset of our youth and our schools and our city really is, because we get opportunities like this periodically, and it's an eye-opener. And we are a blessed community because this type of stuff and these kinds of achievements, they don't just happen. They have to be earned and they have to be invested in, and that's a very special part of who we are as a community. We've got 10 public schools in our city, and we've got a tremendous amount of incredibly intelligent and talented youth. That's who you guys are. You represent this city and this county incredibly well, and we are all better for it to have youth and teachers and faculty and administrators and folks like that to support you and encourage you, and so well done. Look forward to seeing you guys more often and hearing about the accomplishments. So thanks for being here.
I can't add much except this. What you've done is shown a way to invest in yourselves and in the community at the same time. Some point in time, you're probably going to leave to further your education, but you've seen what a wonderful community and what a wonderful place this is to live and work and play. So after you leave and get that education, you're going to want to come back and live here, and you're going to want to contribute to this community, and we're going to want to have you. We're going to need you. So I'm very, very glad to see you guys contributing. I'm glad to see you here on a night in the middle of summer vacation getting your due. We appreciate that. And another thing I noticed is, like, this is no exception to so many times I've seen when she should be up there with you guys. Mrs. Chapman's off to the side taking pictures, taking the video, when she should probably be in them herself. But that's just so you. So thank you. And Nancy, thanks for making this happen.
Mayor, before you close out, I always like to do this every time students come up, and I forgot before. I'm just curious out in the crowd, who's here with these young people? Their mothers, fathers, brothers? Anyone out here?
None? Yeah.
To tell you,
That's it?
normally their mothers and fathers are always
usually
with
are.
them, and today I don't think they even told them about it.
The parents are on
Which is
vacation.
what- Yeah, they're that way too.
Usually they are, and that's usually the indication as to why we see what we see up here, the family structure. So is that important?
I'm going to tip my hand on my age. I am a Hawk class of '85. Perhaps you've heard of us. But if you can live up to the standards of that Hawk class of '85, I'd say that'd be pretty awesome.
I think they're going to support.
I've
They
got
may
a
have
feeling they're
surpassed
going to
them
blow us
already.
away.
We'll see.
Thank you all. Well done.
Well
Enjoy
done.
summer.
You want to do a family photo? Let's do a family photo.
All right. It's happening. Yeah. Good thing you asked.
We're coming to you.
I don't know how she's put
Come on, Dr. Sparger. I got the basketball small feature over here.
Wouldn't be the first time today.
Farther back. I think if I stand behind Mr. Platt, I think those are 5 points.
I want to see her try to stand on one of the
Stand on the
seats.
chair. No, I did that before.
Come on.
She's probably the one person who could pull it off. Any others? Everybody who wants a picture, get one?
Do you want to use my phone so that then I can? One more. You need
I'm getting her aviator trained.
Someone's gonna make sure the observer gets
I'm actually running a summer camp and he's actually running a program if I'd known earlier. So I'm running a summer camp for Moab. You did
I'll give them just a minute to clear out.
Susan's right here. And
Item 14 is Parks and Recreation Month proclamation. The National Recreation Parks Association recognizes July as Parks and Recreation Month. We would like to once again officially declare July as Parks and Recreation Month in the city of Port Orange with a proclamation. There are a number of fun activities, including a pop-up park at the end of the month that you can find on our Facebook page and website. With that, let's see. I saw Mark Bowling. Why don't you come up here? Is Sue Lavallo in the house? Where's she at?
She's
She's
hiding in the
hiding. She
corner.
needs to
in the
unhide.
corner.
Because
Sue needs to
I
unhide.
couldn't help but note in the comments on this that you will be throwing out the first pitch. Here it says a Marlines game.
Who said that?
Yeah, so somebody added an E to the Marlins, so it says you'll be throwing a pitch out of the Marlines game next week.
It
of
might
course,
not have been
I
me.
think
Is that true? Is that a done deal?
I think that was kind of
Probably not.
a misprint. I can't understand why they would have done that to you, but Sue, I think it's important to recognize she is the president of the Florida Recreation and Parks Association this year. And here I get to wear you out with the whereases. There are 7.
You don't have to do hashtags. Just
No,
do-
well, if there are 7 whereases, it's got to be a good proclamation.
Heck yeah.
Whereas parks and recreation programs are an integral part of communities throughout this country, including the city of Port Orange. And whereas our parks and recreation are vitally important to establishing and maintaining the quality of life in our communities, ensuring the health of all citizens, and contributing to the economic and environmental well-being of a community and region. And whereas parks and recreation programs build healthy and active communities that aid in the prevention of chronic disease, provide therapeutic recreation services for those who are mentally or physically disabled, and also improve the mental and emotional health of all citizens. And whereas parks and recreation programs increase a community's economic prosperity through increased property values. True. Expansion of the local tax base, increased tourism, the attraction and retention of businesses, and crime reduction. And whereas parks and recreation areas are fundamental to the environmental well-being of a community, and whereas parks and natural recreation areas improve water quality, protect groundwater, prevent flooding, improve the quality of the air we breathe, provide vegetative buffers to development, and provide habitat for wildlife. And Whereas our parks and natural recreation areas ensure the ecological beauty of our community and provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature and recreate outdoors. And now therefore it be resolved that by Donald O. Burnett, Mayor of the City of Port Orange, Florida, that July is recognized as Parks and Recreation Month in the City of Port Orange. And with my signature on this document and the seal of the city, it is so declared. Mark? As a representative of the Parks and Rec Board?
And Mayor, this evening, Mark is now our new chairman.
Hey.
Nice.
Would you please take a minute?
Congratulations on the new appointment, Mark. Nobody better.
Yes. It was unfortunate. Most of you probably know a couple of unfortunate things happened in our meeting today. Jack Wiles has moved out of the city, so he's no longer to be able to be chairman. The other unfortunate thing was I was the vice chairman, so I moved up to that position. So you have to deal with me, I guess, at the next meeting.
So we
That's
doubled
perfect.
your pay in the process?
Doubled it, yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
absolutely. Thanks.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark. And Susan.
Hey, Susan, good luck with that baseball throwing out thing at the Marlines game.
I'll do my best.
There you go.
I promise not to make any highlight reels.
Citizen participation, Jim Schultz. I knew I saw you out there.
Jim Schultz, 117 Harvard. First, just want to start off with thank you to Port Orange for Sugar Mill Gardens. It really is a historical gem that most cities might not have had the foresight to make available to the public. The dinosaurs, that's
Bongoland.
unique. Yeah, Bongoland, exactly. Even had a railroad going around it. When Marineland started up, it wasn't long after that, Bongoland. Thank you for keeping it. What I came about was, like Ms. Denny's, I'm also for clean water. And right now, they're heading towards the court case on the fluoridation issue. Toxic Substance Control Act allows the EPA to be sued, and they've been kicking and screaming, but they've lost every decision so far by the judge as far as discovery and interviewing the employees at the EPA. And there have been a lot of discoveries made that are sort of unsavory. But the concept is when you're using an environmental toxin that the EPA knew was an environmental toxin because they ordered pollution scrubbers at the phosphate mines in '72 because of the destruction of the animals and the crops in the area from the fluoride destruction. But then they made it acceptable to put it into the drinking water around the United States, a known pollutant, as a copacetic benefit to get rid of an environmental toxin. They've done some more due diligence. Well, the thing is, the EPA unions, 19 of the 22 unions, have asked Congress years ago to halt fluoridation until the safety studies could be done. Oops, they forgot to do those. Well, the EPA finally paid for and got one study on IQ damage. It took 15 years. There had already been 52 of them showing damage to IQ at levels not that dissimilar from water fluoridation. And guess what? This one showed 5 to 6 IQ points at the same levels that were in the water. And that's really not acceptable. They already knew it damaged teeth, and they said if it ever got beyond 10%, 12%, they'd halt fluoridation. Well, it's up to 60%, and they forgot to tell you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Whoa, whoa.
Talk about a sense of
You
time.
okay?
We stopped twice.
Marlines.
Okay.
That's Robin Fenwick, City Clerk down there, everybody, just in case you're wondering. Not that I'm trying to embarrass anybody or anything.
Technical difficulty.
Yeah, we'll let you slide tonight, this time. Council comments and concerns? Let's start with Scott.
I don't have anything tonight.
Drew?
I'm good tonight.
Well, Chase?
Sorry, I'll break the mold. Just did have one question in regards to panhandling. Jake, I know, and this might be a question for legal as well. I know we're exhausting as many avenues as we can. We want to, with respect to people's First Amendment right. At the same time, we have the right of businesses to do business without having their customers harassed and things of that nature. Is there, what's the legality of asking the panhandlers for a business license, something of that nature? These guys are out there working, they're getting money, they're getting paid. Should they be required to have a license to do what they do out there? And if not, I'm just looking at the financial transaction. Obviously, you wouldn't want to enact a license for anybody to be out there. Nobody needs a license for speech. We already have that protected in the Constitution. But if it's a money-making scheme, or if it's a job that they're looking at and that's their primary source of income, is that a possible measure that we can look at enacting? I just wanted to get some education on that from legal or.
Councilmember Tremont, we'd like to bring you back a full report on that question if that's permissible.
Okay.
Yeah, and you know, one of the things that I think the one time I made the newspaper when I said everybody and made it like a 7-syllable word, but I always want to caution against singling out panhandlers. We have rules that apply to everybody. So if they're getting smaller, so if you do for one, you got to do for everybody. You can't just say that guy over there in the purple shorts can't do what I don't want him to do. But you know, the sign. It was the sign reference last month or last week. A person on a sidewalk that's a panhandler has a sign, or a person that's running for re-election has a sign. Those two people are doing the same thing. The message is just different. My child selling lemonade is selling lemonade. That's a business. Man standing on the corner saying, I don't have any money, is just standing on the corner. The fact that we or somebody gives him money, you know, I think that's where Margaret needs to, and we'll give you a report on what's right or what's wrong. But if you'd allow me to kind of tell you what we are trying to do, to discourage people from doing things in the city, and I'll tell you what those things are. Walking in the street, in the road. That is a safety issue. Has nothing to do with what the people are doing in the road. Mm-hmm. If they're in the road, not in a crosswalk, they're endangering themselves and endangering the people on the road, whether the car's stopped or not. I think, and the police chief thinks that people in the median, that median is not there for people to traverse and walk around. That is a dangerous place to be. So you can't be hanging out in the median other than to cross at the crosswalk. And then any other walking in areas where there's vehicles obviously is dangerous. We're looking at on-ramps and off-ramps. If the Florida Department of Transportation determines that those are part of the highway thoroughfare, one of the rules, the state rules on highways is you can't be a pedestrian on a highway. So on-ramps and off-ramps, if you're a pedestrian walking up and down that on-ramp and off-ramp, that is unsafe. People are traveling at higher rate of speeds, coming off that off-ramp, concentrating on the green light or the yellow light, or sometimes the red light, but not on you. So we're working on that. And and then anybody that breaks the law or is on private property and the property owner does not want them there, they can ask them to leave, and if they come back, that's trespassing. Additionally, you'll see later on the agenda that we will not allow people to break the law in certain public places and continue to break the law. Jake Johansson has a beer at Riverwalk Park, not in a sanctioned event. Police Chief Grimaldi can arrest me for drinking in public. If I come back tomorrow, right now, I might be able to do it again. I want to be able to, and we're going to talk about trespassing those people so they can't repeatedly offend in the same location day after day after day. So those are the things we're doing, and those laws apply to everybody.
I appreciate that update.
You bet.
I would also, Margaret, I am curious as to a report, and I appreciate the comment on treating everybody the same. So I guess I'd be curious as to what could be explored for any financial transaction that takes place on public property. Obviously, I'm not referring to fundraisers outside of Walmart or Publix, things of that nature. But if a financial a transaction takes place, do we have options? You know, because that's continuing to be a major source of conversation throughout our community. And one of the comments I continue to hear is, well, Daytona just passed an ordinance and now they're coming all the way down here. Well, that's a different story, and that's not a ball game that I want to get into, because frankly, there's going to be a day in court where they're going to have to defend that ordinance, and I'm not sure it's going to hold water, to be honest with you. I don't want to put this city in that position to have to defend that, because there are major First Amendment issues within that. But at the same time, I don't want it to escape people's attention that we are aware that this is, it's certainly a nuisance that's been coming to our area, and it's a major problem for some others. So I just want to look at any option that we have.
Yes, sir.
That's all I have, Mayor. Thanks.
I'm sure we'll have some other comments when we get to item 18 as well. Jake, did I go to you?
No.
I started this
But
one.
I don't have any comments
Oh, well, thank God.
at this juncture.
I almost blew that flag. I'm like, couldn't remember which end I started on. Chase really threw me off there. Question I had in going through the, and I know we're going to discuss it, the citizen survey, but there are a number of things that came out of that in reading of the comments. And I was curious if we track turn times on permit applications by type.
Yes, we do.
Can we see some of that data? Because I'm kind of curious to see when people say they wait a long time for permits. I'm sure there are different turn times for different types, but I kind of like to see what the data says.
Yeah, and Tim
See
can
what we're
provide that,
talking
and there's, what I see is there are a lot of caveats to that. There's definitely room for improvement, Mayor, and online permitting, things of that nature, which is in the budget. We're working on that. Can make matters a lot quicker, and what we find when we start peeling the onion back is that permits take a long time because either they're not submitted right or there's issues with them. But we'll get you that and get you some of the majority of the reasoning on the time and some of the delays.
Okay. Because I want to, if I'm going to talk about it, I want to know what I'm talking about.
Yes, sir.
Last week, the magistrate ruled on the former church building on Williamson. Jake, can you recap for us what we saw the magistrate do last week?
Yes, sir. So the magistrate met on Wednesday, and the mayor and I both attended. The magistrate found the owners of the church in violation and of many things, and gave them till July 18th, I believe, July 18th, to do the weeds and high grass, and then gave them till September 1st to fix the stucco, the facade, do the pressure washing, and board up all the windows. And then failure to meet that deadline could result in as much as a $5,000 a day fine if he doesn't meet that 1 September timeline.
And he's incurring fines now?
He is not.
Okay.
He is not. He'll incur his first fine on the 19th if he doesn't have high weeds and grass, and then incur the next fine September 1st. In addition to, well, you asked, so it's out in the public now, but in addition to this meeting, Christine Martindale will be putting out a press release to the media on the 18th. We're going to make sure that they get the high weeds and grass, and then push out a press release to kind of let the media know. They had reported on it. We want to give them an update on what the outcome was.
One last aspect, Mayor. This particular property owner will also be subject to repeat violations.
Yes.
So that will increase the fines.
Okay. Needless to say, all of us here will be watching because I think we're all at wit's end with them. Speaking of high weeds and grass, Jake, if you go north on Nova Road from Herbert Street, where you get to the split at the canal, you can see where county maintenance picks up because the grass on the side of the road is about 3 feet tall.
Yes, sir.
Again, and quite frankly, I know their standard of care is different from ours, but their standard of care violates our code, and if we have to cite them, then let's cite them. I'd rather go through better channels of communication.
And we had
But,
Councilmember Denny's here just minutes ago.
yeah, well, bad timing.
We'll let them know.
But to me, it's just like, I know that they're not gonna mow as often as we do, but when we drive down Nova Road or we drive down Clyde Morris, the average citizen doesn't make the determination as to whether we're mowing or whether the county's mowing. We just know that it's wrong.
So I will share with you that whenever anybody brings that to our attention, we call. Usually Lynn beats us to the draw, already did it. Pressure on me to put pressure on Lynn to put pressure on somebody in Public Works to up their schedule on our behalf is interesting. Pressure from you all to Councilmember Denny's and Councilmember Wheeler to change the schedule, it helps as well. So if you all can help us, and we'll continue to press. Clyde Morris, did Clyde Morris get done yet? And so Clyde Morris got done last week.
Up to the fences and everything?
Well, I don't know how up to the
I
fences is.
could tell Clyde Morris got done last week when
It
I
got
drove
mowed.
down and saw all the grass blown into the road.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So
Mayor, I've
Yeah.
got a meeting with Billy Wheeler next week, and I'll follow up with that.
If you can take care of Billy, I'll take care of Deb. Okay?
Perfect.
And then,
What else you got?
one last thing. I think I've talked about this before, I can't recall. But when Jim mentioned Sugar Mill Gardens tonight, it reminded me that what we've done in City Center with crosswalk signs, is it possible we could look at doing something there or some kind of pacification to help with pedestrians get across the street?
I
there
think
to
they've
the
already
park?
asked, and we've already replied to them as to what we can legally and what we have researched to do. I think we've cut some trees back, and are we there with the? We're not gonna put the thing in the middle, right? If I recall.
We didn't plan to put a thing in the middle, but we have the flashing.
Flashing. We have a flashing light on the
So
side.
We're helping.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And we have indicated that to them via letter or email reply at least, that's
Okay.
what we're doing.
Very good. Okay. That's all I've got for now. Board appointments, interviews, and reports. Council member appointments. Item 16, Fire Pension Board appointment. Item 1 is the Fire Pension Board appointment, and item 2 was the appointment to Art House. The recommended appointments were, hello.
Well, they were recommended by staff based on previous owners.
Well, actually, we talked about this.
Yes, sir.
And I wanted to put it on the agenda so we could vote on it.
Yeah.
We were going to suggest that Marilyn take the spot on both of the, I'm sorry, I can't.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
We're-
fire pension and art house.
So we're drafting her to service immediately for both of those.
Yes.
May I have a motion for approval of that nomination?
So moved.
Second.
Because I want you to have the ability to have a voice on this, let's call the roll.
Shouldn't I abstain?
No.
I have a
Councilwoman
self
Ford.
interest. Yes.
All right.
Councilman Bastian.
Yes.
Councilman Stiltner.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Tremont.
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes, 5-0.
5-0.
You have been drafted accordingly. Item 17. Coming down to second reading of ordinance number 2017-19. Fire assessment procedure continued from June 18th. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Port Orange, Florida, amending Chapter 30 of the City of Port Orange Code of Ordinance to establish a new Article 3 in relating to the funding of the fire protection services, facilities, and programs throughout the incorporated areas of Port Orange, Florida, authorizing the imposition and collection of fire protection assessments against real property, providing definitions and findings, establishing procedures imposing fire protection assessments, authorizing the imposition of interim assessments, providing that assessments constitute a lien on assessed property upon adoption of the assessment roll, describing the procedure for administering the fire protection assessment from year to year, and for correcting errors and omissions, providing for collection of the assessments, providing for severability, providing for codification, and providing for an effective date.
Motion to approve ordinance number 2019-19.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. This is second reading. Council comments or questions?
Just want to be clear that this is maintaining our ability to do that if that's something that we choose. It's not actually doing it at this point, but it's maintaining our
is-
ability to do it.
That is correct, and we've been spending a lot of quality time on the budget the past few days, and we did not incorporate it into the budget this year at all.
I think that's wise, because I don't think those of us up on the
No,
dais
sir.
have an appetite to do it this year, albeit, from my point, I'd like us to be able to have that tool in the toolbox.
Yep.
With 1,100 homes in the city of Port Orange that pay nothing, I think something is fair, even if it's just $25. And it should be a net where if we're charging the average homeowner a $25 fire assessment, there should be a $25 reduction in the according adjustment in millage rate, so that there's not a tax increase on those who are paying. It should be absolutely flat. But I think it's fair I think it's a fair way when you have a non-ad valorem assessment that everybody pays something and everybody's paying the same thing. I, for one, am not fond of property taxes because there are so many inequities in the way we do it, from homestead exemptions to save our homes, to non-homestead exemptions, to investment property, to businesses. But the reality is, it's the system that we have, and I think that we need to continue to be good stewards. We had the 4th lowest rate of millage in the county last year, and for my part, I'm voting yes to put this tool in the toolbox, but I have no appetite to do that this year. I think that there's legitimate reasons to consider it at whatever point in time, whether it be this council or a future council. If the time is right, I want them to be able to do it.
And recall, there's two ways to do it, and putting it on the tax roll is remember we did the stormwater fee increase,
Yeah.
and that was, I don't want to say painful, it was cumbersome, and we met with council 5 or 6 times in order to get that discussed and the right rate and everything. So it's a pretty complex process to put it on the tax roll. The other way is on the utility bill. It's somewhat similar, but equally as hashed out up here on the dais. Not something that the city manager just can do on a Tuesday.
Anyone here care to speak to the item?
Don, I have some comments.
No one? I'm coming back to us in just a second. There's no one else. Chase, I know you I know that you have some strong feelings about it.
Yeah, just, for final comments, we've already batted this one around. I understand rationale behind it, and there's good merit to it, to put another tool in the box, you know, from an administrative standpoint. From a taxpayer standpoint, you know, I look at it as another way for government to take more money from my pocket. You know, and I think it would start out as a nice way to balance it out and even it out a little bit, take a little here, and subtract it over here. But I look at that way as just kissing me on one cheek and slapping me on the other. You know, at some point, those fees are going to get raised again and again and again. But again, I see the merit of it. You know, I think the community has sent a pretty strong message that they're tired of seeing tax increases and they don't want to see any more fees added either. That's my position on it.
Marilyn?
Has everybody else talked? Because I want to make sure I have the history. I'm coming in new, so.
No?
We're good.
Okay. I do want to ask a question about the computation of this. I had a conversation with the city manager and the assistant city manager the other day, and I went back, Mr. Rosen, and reread it again. And so could you go over if a fire assessment fee is created and council decides to implement it in a particular year? One of the questions I asked him is that this legislation seems to suggest that every single year council needs to revisit the issue, even in those years when we elect to have a fire assessment fee of 0. So I want to just make sure, because that's not exactly what you and I chatted about yesterday.
I'm trying to think, and sorry, Alan Rosen, Assistant City Manager. It should pretty much be the same thing as the, let's say, the stormwater fee. And we do not reset that every year if it does not change, correct?
We approve it with the budget.
It's approved with the budget. The rate is approved every
Right.
year, but you don't have to go back and re-notify everybody. So if it stays the same or underneath what you said the maximum was going to be, you don't have to individually notify everybody via first-class mail.
Okay. So that leads me to my comments. Thank you very much. First of all, I have a concern. I mean, I do think it's a good idea in the sense that we have nearly 1,000 people that don't pay property taxes but use our services. So a fire assessment fee is a universal fee, if you will, that all residents would pay. My concern is that we make sure that if we create it, it doesn't duplicate general fund dollars.
Right.
The
Right.
assumption is the fire assessment fee goes on and we have a savings in general fund. But therein, I think, is the ingredients for interpretation and mischief. Because every year then you've got to make sure that the calls that are being counted are solely fire and not emergency, ambulance, or something else.
And that's by law.
Well, that's by law, but the devil's in the details in terms of auditing that. And so I want to make sure that the taxpayer doesn't end up having to pay by virtue of how things are counted. I come from the crime world, and crime statistics, crime going up and down, how sheriffs, police departments count crime from year to year is an opportunity rife with a lot of mischief and changes. So that's one of my concerns. My second concern, but otherwise I mean, I do understand the utility of it, and if it is an even exchange, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
The problem
Well,
with
it's a
this
legitimate concern. It absolutely
the
is.
problem with this particular formulation is, as we chatted, which I think you addressed, is once, if a fee is instituted and council acts to set a cap, then in successive years, unless that number changes, I really think that the public doesn't get an opportunity to really know what that fee is. And in fact, when we chatted, you had indicated, Mr. Rosen, that if we set a threshold at, say, $25 annually, but let's suppose year one, we decide to charge only $5, but the next year, we could go up 6, 7, 8, as long as we stayed under that cap.
That
I
would
don't think
be-
that's accountable, and I don't think that's transparent,
w-
and that concerns me.
Yeah, that would be like the stormwater fee. You just can't arbitrarily change the fee. You set the fee and then have to reset the fee.
Yeah, so
And-
they're,
Through the public hearing process.
Well, that's what I was asking about.
That's right.
yeah, so it's Alan Rosen, Assistant City Manager again. It is it's a non-ad valorem assessment. And so just like the ad valorem assessment every year, you have to go through, you have to pass a resolution, you have to set the rate. So residents would actually have the same ability to come and talk to you about that rate as they would the ad valorem rate that you set every year. The only time that it's a little bit different is when you set that maximum rate, and if you want to go above that, then you have to do that extra step of doing the first class mailings that year to really notify.
Right,
to
but I
extremely-
guess I'm thinking in the budget process,
Mhm.
we could up it, and a resident who's not really new to the town, that understands the general fund, but doesn't understand the difference in this rate, might be surprised if it
That would
goes
have
up
to be a
little bit.
separate item. It would not be in, like the stormwater fee happened outside the budget process. When did it happen? In June, July? Separate. And then we said, I think we said we wanted 125, we went down to 115, and then we put those numbers in
Certainly
the
filled the room
budget.
with people to talk about it.
And we did. So I would see the fire assessment being a separate conversation from the budget, not wrapped
And it
in there
should be.
where it can get lost in the sauce.
Okay, but that's not what Mr. Rosen just said. That's my point. I want to make sure when we take action today, Mr. Rosen just indicated the fire assessment fee would come up during the budget process. That's my
it
point. I
would.
want to make sure
It-
we're transparent and accountable to the citizens.
It would, because I'm getting consensus from council that the fee would offset ad valorem. So if I'm bringing in 95% or 98% of a fire assessment fee, let's just say $100,000 is what the city's bringing in, then I have to, in the budget, because you want to offset ad valorem, to say the fire cost you $1 million this year, but I'm going to knock $100,000 off because that $100,000 is being absorbed by the fire assessment fee. So the ad valorem's only going to pay for $900,000 worth of fire. So it's not mutually exclusive, but it would, the fee itself, the fire assessment fee, would be determined exclusive of the budget.
Okay, then I would propose, if council is thinking about it, we put that in the ordinance so that when none of us are here and 10 years down the road, people can't forget that that's the basis on which we are interested in passing this ordinance.
Well,
Perhaps
Mark,
an
I was about to
addition
ask you, are we,
through a whereas would be the best place to build that finding that you decide is crucial tonight. I believe we would be able, it's not material, we're not changing the ordinance, we're reflecting the full conversation. That could be added as a whereas for your finding tonight, and I believe we can get that accomplished for you.
Can I understand the exact request? Because there are very specific legal guidelines in the way this was written to make sure that we follow the law and how these things are adopted. So I wouldn't want to throw anything in there that would be adverse to that. I'm just trying to understand the
And
request.
absolutely, my preference would be to add language that I can legally defend and our office can legally defend. So we will wordsmith that based upon what I'm hearing tonight. I'll make it available and then we'll work from there.
so what we're talking about is adding a whereas that, and before I ask you to make the motion, I want to make sure we have this fully fleshed out.
Well, I have one more point that might address
Okay.
whether we need
So
to go
whereas
to
that
that
we're
motion.
utilizing the public hearing process to make sure that,
So
That's required by the law anyway.
I know.
So-
Yeah.
But if you put it in the ordinance, we're spelling it out in plain language.
So is there
I know
an
it's covered by
option,
law.
Margaret, to consider that if we should ever institute a fee, to put that in the resolution for the fee? Oh, look who's here.
Matt Jones, Deputy City Attorney. So in this ordinance, you're going to have, as a council, you establish the fee by resolution. So it is a separate, singled out, like you
Right.
indicated. Now it'll be part of a budget discussion for the offset, but as far as setting this fee or changing this fee, even after you've set the cap, that has to be done by resolution of council. So that will be a standalone item that will be voted on an agenda.
In a
as
public.
That
part
can
of
have
the-
all
Okay.
stipulations
Correct.
attached to it that we
It
need
just
to.
doesn't have that super notice provision that you talked about, the
Gotcha.
first hand
Okay.
mailing or whatever that we have to do to every resident.
Okay.
But it will be a resolution every time you adjust that within your cap. If you go over the cap, now we're sending mail out to 22,000
Okay.
customers.
Okay, I'm good with that
Yeah.
then, and I
Yeah.
do understand that. But
Okay.
I think we might want to reflect, I'm going to suggest, and then my final point would be, we've already heard from the dais that people want to put this tool in the toolbox, but they don't need it now. And so for me, philosophically, we're creating a tax. And essentially, we're putting a hammer in the toolbox. And the question I would ask, in my opinion, is why do we need the tool now? Isn't it interesting we talk about putting the hammer in the toolbox, but we never talk about the hoist
This is
or
the
a
part we-
positive?
And this is the part you weren't here for, too.
Well, but I also, we never talk about passing or getting ready a tool where we're gonna, for example, rebate to the taxpayers any unexpended dollars out of a budget. Why do we always talk about the tax? And for me, particularly at this time, the public has told us with the defeated sales tax, they don't want any more tax. So to say we've got this in our back pocket, it's the wrong thing. So in that spirit, I make a motion to postpone consideration of ordinance 219-19 fire assessment protection until such time as council has a specific proposal to institute such a fee.
I'll second.
Well, the one thing that we would be throwing away is we have had a lot of public hearings on it. We've had a consultant in to help us set this up, and we've spent some time and dollars on it, and we would have to basically start over from scratch.
We
and
haven't
do that.
lost any of this work.
Yes, we
It
have.
sits on the shelf,
Yeah,
and if you
done.
pass it today and you don't use it for another year, legal's gonna have to go back and say, have any new court cases come out that affects what was passed, because now we want to use the tool. Or they'll have to ask, has the state legislature done anything that's relevant to this? We're no further ahead or behind. And in fact, I think it's the right message. If we're not going to use the tool, and we're telling the people we're not going to assess or tax you right now, then why the heck? We have not lost a thing. We can come back 6 months from now, and that's no different than if we pass it, and 6 months from now, we've got to do a checkup and make sure that it's still operational.
Mayor,
Margaret?
council member, you are correct that the law could change in the interim, and we would update to the status of the law at that point in time, which could alter the terms of the ordinance. The other thing that happens is the data that you've analyzed to determine what is a reasonable fee to be charged becomes stale as time goes on. We looked at that life of the data and determined that we did not want to go for a long period of time because we would have to redo the data analysis
And that's what we'd have to pay to redo.
reconsider what the reasonable fee is in light of all the factual circumstances of the cost of the calls as well as the impact upon the various areas of the city. So that's why we thought it important to make use of that data determination now, puts you in a position to make use of it when you decide to implement by resolution to establish a fee. Otherwise, you know, that data is growing old, so to
Well,
speak.
what's the shelf life of the data?
I am recommending 1 year. It may go longer, but the status of our recommendation right now is 1 year.
Well, if we wait for a year, we'd have to, would it be expired? So you'd have to redo it. So I don't know that there's a difference. I don't know that there's a compelling enough difference to dissuade me from voting against passing this right now. Because the shelf life, the data has a shelf life. It's
Correct.
known. None of your language in here talks about numbers and dollars amount or what the fee should be.
Right.
So that I don't know that that makes any difference. If we consider it in 3 months, 6 months from now, apparently it would fit the data you've got. If we're gonna wait for a year anyways till next budget process, we're gonna be asking the same question. The data shelf life is gone, it's expired, we need new data. We're exactly where we are today.
A comment that Councilmember Ford made, that's important, but I think when we talk about a hammer and a hoist, it depends on who you are. The people that pay absolutely no city property taxes right now, a fee would appear to be a hammer. But to those people that pay taxes and pay more than maybe they should because there's 1,100 people that aren't paying anything, that would be a hoist. Now, you could say that those people don't need the hoist as much as the people who don't pay taxes, but I really don't know that.
That's
So
up to the five of us to decide.
it depends on who the person is, whether it's a hoist or a hammer, and that's with a lot of issues up here.
Any other questions or comments on this motion?
Yeah, I would just
Motion to
say that,
table.
you know, we've had a tremendous amount of discussion on this topic for a long time. There's been a ton of money invested and staff time, and I think it's important, at least for me, to draw back to what this was all about. And we're referring to it as a tool, but as the discussions that we seem to have year after year after year, I think we all agree that our system of generating revenue to operate the city has its flaws. It's not perfect, and in many ways it's out of balance. And all I see this is an opportunity to give us or other councils in the future a way to rebalance some of that. I think Marilyn's comments at the beginning there are point on. That's exactly what I've been thinking through this process, is we're out of balance. And to Chase's point, if we don't put options available in our toolbox to rebalance that, how are we ever going to be able to do that? I think your points are very valid and what public perception is, but that's our job to try to help better deliver that message, to say, look, there's going to be some folks here who don't pay anything for these services that are going to have to start paying a little bit. Other folks who seemingly pay way more than their fair share are probably going to see a reduction in what they're paying in. And so that's how you bring back some of that balance. Some call it fair taxing. Well, call it that if you want, but all I'm thinking is it's an opportunity to us to have options to rebalance some of those things. I think there's consensus is there. Staff hasn't recommended it this year. I think we've all said we're not interested in doing it this year. But at least I think it's a prudent and responsible thing at this point to have it available for the future, for sure. And especially because so much time and money and energy and effort has been put into this, that I just think it's something to try to reflect back and think that I look at this at least as an option somewhere down the road, not to raise fees, not to raise taxes, not to look for more revenue from our residents, but to look for rebalancing some of that. And that's just my point to that. And I know we could probably sit up here and debate this one until 2 a.m. I'm confident, well, we'd have until 11, but confident of that. And I think every single person up here has got really great insight and comments. And I think that goes to show, by the way, how imperfect the system that we have really is, and how out of balance it can be at times, and the concerns that we have, because it seems to me like this balance keeps growing out of balance, not rebalancing itself. So that's my thoughts on it.
If I can just add, and those are great comments, you know, and the reason I've offered a second to Marilyn is because, again, I do see the merit behind it. The history behind this proposal was because of the fear of Amendment 1 that was going to be passing, where we were going to be losing maybe $1.so million out of our budget. So it was a reactive measure in order to do that. Once that did not pass, again, personally, I lost interest. But I don't mind, Maryland's, Councilwoman Maryland's proposal to put it off, to vote for it at a time when it's used. I just don't want to put a tool in the box when I have no intention of using it. And I just fear that we get in ourselves in a situation where we're fighting more for opportunities to generate revenue as opposed to fighting more to prioritize our spending a little better, make sure we don't put ourselves in a position where we need to generate that revenue.
Yeah, for me, it's not an issue of generating revenue, it's an issue of equity. So I'm not,
Sure.
when we're talking about net, we're not raising any more revenue.
Sure.
But,
I get that.
But the main reason why I don't want to proceed with it this year at all, from my part anyway, and this is just my opinion, is that the amount of time and energy it would take to make sure that the public understands what we're doing is not designed to raise taxes, but rather, I don't think we have the
Rebalance
time
revenue.
or the ability to get that message across in this short a budget season. And I think it would be improper to do that to the taxpayer without taking a proper methodical approach to it, which is, I am very, very serious about wanting to do this at some point in time because of equity. I don't think it's fair that you and I should pay property taxes in the city of Port Orange and 1,100 people don't. Those services are all available to everybody. But at the same time, I also know that my means and your means and the means of everybody in this room, they're different. Nobody's means are the same. So I'm not insensitive to that. That's why I feel like everybody should pay something, even if it's not a lot. But everybody should pay something. Just my thoughts. We have a motion on the floor.
We have
and let me
two.
clear-
We have two.
Well, the motion on the floor right now we have is to
Enact the ordinance, excuse me.
no. The first motion on the floor is to table.
Postpone, not table.
To
Postpone.
postpone indefinitely.
No,
No, 'cause we're-
postpone until
This is
such
why I'm
time
asking.
as council has a specific proposal. If I tabled it, if we
Okay.
didn't bring it back at this meeting, it would kill it.
Mm-hmm.
I want to bring it back at the appropriate time,
Gotcha.
and so indefinitely, I think that's too, out there. That such time as council has a specific proposal to institute such a fee.
Does everybody up here understand what they're being asked to do to vote on this
No,
motion?
no, because I thought we had you read the other one
We
first.
we have to vote on this first, and then if this passes or fails, then we'll vote on the main motion. This is,
A
Sorry.
motion to table will take precedent over the prior motion.
which is why it needs to be voted on first.
This isn't quite a motion
To
to
table.
table, but it may have similar results.
It's a motion to postpone.
I would
Understood.
I would
think
just
the
like
other
to
one has to
offer
go first.
maybe a tweak to the language that will still accomplish what you want in the motion, but still be able to accomplish legally, because you have to have this ordinance in place to be able to have a plan to implement the fee. So if you made that motion, you legally would bind yourself in a way that you would never be able to bring it back up, because you wouldn't be able to have the ordinance before having the plan. You have to have the ordinance in place before you even have a plan to do it. So if you made a motion to say we can't bring it back up until we have a specific plan to implement the fee, you can't have a specific plan to implement the fee unless you have the ordinance.
Okay,
So just some other tweaking.
Instead of proposal, until we're ready to institute a fee, that's what I'm saying.
Yes.
Let's not pass this until we're ready to do something.
So it sounds like to me, council will revive this when council.
Yes.
No.
And maybe one or more in a meeting says, okay, we need to look at this fire
Yes.
assessment fee again, and we need to go ahead and go through that process.
Exactly.
But we've
In my
already gone
mind, it's
through the
not
process.
dead. There's value to it. It's just, if we're not going to use it right now, I think it sends the wrong message. I think it puts stuff out there that we don't need. And, why do it? we're not losing anything, because from what I'm hearing, the day may come and it may be next budget year that we're talking about that. That's within the 1-year shelf life, which in my mind is no different than if, it just sits there unused. But I think it's the wrong thing to do.
Do me a favor, clarify your motion for the rest of us who are voting on it and for the clerk who's got to type it up.
Mayor, and may I interject one more time?
No.
She cannot.
Okay.
No, okay. I'm going to suggest a slight modification for the motion and the second, and that is that you consider tabling. That way it does clearly take precedent over the other motion.
Okay.
For the staff to bring it back upon council further direction.
That's fine.
So your motion would be to table at such point until council gives directions to staff to bring it back?
Yes.
Okay. So the motion, and Chase, is that your second?
Hold on for a second.
Okay. So we are motioning to table until such time as council gives staff direction to bring it back to us. With that, call the roll.
Councilwoman Ford,
Yes.
Councilman Bastian,
No.
Councilman Stiltner,
No.
Vice Mayor Tremont,
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Man, I hate when you guys do this to me.
A lot of work's gone into it.
No.
Okay.
We go to the main motion. Did I give public opportunity to speak to it?
Yes, sir. Yes, I do believe you
Okay,
did.
I did
Yes.
do that.
Yeah,
Then we
we
came
did
back
that.
to us. On the main motion, call the roll.
Councilwoman Ford,
No.
Councilman Bastian,
Yes.
Councilman Stiltner.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Tremont,
No.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes, 3-2. We survived that. Brings us to item 18. This one should be just as much fun.
That issue even prompted
I don't have
Alan to
any
bring a
comment
stress
of
ball,
anything
Alan? Alan?
Second reading of ordinance number 2019-22, trespassing on public property. An ordinance of the City of Port Orange, Volusia County, Florida, amending Chapter 58 of the Code of Ordinance to establish a new Section 58-4, setting forth the authority and procedures for issuance of trespass warnings for public property, providing for codification, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Motion to approve ordinance number 2019-22.
I'll second.
We have a motion, a second. We have further comments from council on this one?
Just trying to figure out how we can use the hoist and the hammer analogy. Marilyn will help me out with that, I'm sure. No, this is an ordinance of growing pains, so to speak. And we need to make sure that as a city that we can protect the public properties, the parks, and the areas that are the nearest and dearest to our residents, and have those things laid out so that we can have ability to enforce and protect those assets and the quality of life. This is exactly what this is. This is about quality of life stuff. And this is the type of things that separate us from a lot of other cities, to try to take these steps and put these measures in place that'll help us to continue to protect that.
Drew?
I agree.
Anything?
Yes. No, I agree with that second reading, and that's.
Chase?
Yeah, just one question, sorry, and I don't want to.
No, go ahead.
We don't spend much time on second reading, but to Margaret, just help me clarify and understand, make sure that we're in the law in this case. We trespass somebody after they've committed, repeat offenses, et cetera, but how can you, how do you trespass someone on public property, and if they have not violated the law at that moment when you're trespassing, just help me clarify how we're within the law on this.
There would be a finding of a violation of the law. There's some conduct that is in violation of the law, whether it be drinking in the public or littering. Some action on the part of the individual will give cause to the trespass action. If
So-
it becomes a repetitive problem and the same person coming back over and over and over with the same kinds of violations, then that person could be trespassed for a period of time on the first instance.
But if they haven't broken the law at that point that we're trying to
If they
trespass
haven't broken the
them, I
law,
just
there'll
want
be no conduct against them.
Okay, so we have to wait until, okay, that's just what I wanted.
The
'cause-
whole purpose is
Yeah.
to attain compliance with the law. These are perhaps minor laws in some people's minds, like, having a beer, an open container in a park. It's not a serious crime, but it's an important crime to the safety of the park users. So we don't want repeat violations.
I just want to understand the language though, because the trespassing in and of itself is not a violation, correct?
Can I take a stab?
Yes,
But-
of course.
I'm
Help
sorry.
me out.
Let me try to
'cause I'm
put
not
this in like a layman's scenario perspective. So, and I get it because the kind of the titling of this sometimes can be a little tricky. But think about it like this: so you've got a public park. It's an area that is available to the public, but you still have laws and ordinance and rules in that park. And when people break those, this allows us to identify that you have violated this law, ordinance, or rule. And for the next year, you're not allowed to come back to this park. If you do, we will arrest you for trespassing. That's how it works. So the fact that
Gotcha.
they broke that rule that particular day doesn't necessarily, in all likelihood, mean that they're going to get arrested that day for breaking that particular rule. It's a
That's what I
measure for
wanted to
them
get
to
at.
be able
When
to
they come
say,
back.
hey, look, we've identified this as a problem. You don't want to comply with the rules, laws, or ordinances. We're giving you this notice, which is for 1 year, or second 2 years for repeat.
Correct.
And if you come back to that property, then you are subject to being arrested for the trespass violation.
Thanks for
That's
that
kind of how it
clarification.
works.
Thanks, Scott. Final thing, do we spell out exactly what is a repeat offender? Is it 2 times, 3 times, 4 times?
Yes.
Yep.
You good?
I'm good, thank you.
Marilyn?
I'm good with it.
Okay. Well, I've got to vent a little bit. And I know it's second reading, and usually
Thanks
this
for
is
that, Scott.
procedural.
Have you been trespassed from a park? Sorry, Mayor. Got to been at least a year, right?
I work with these people. I've got to vent a little bit because I see a lot of people working hard on the panhandling problem. And I know this applies to any bad actor, not just panhandlers. But I've got to say that I'm frustrated with the results, because the results that I'm seeing with panhandling in this city is that we're still going backwards. And that's not an indictment on our efforts. But council, please agree. I'm going to put a statement out there, and please tell me if you agree with this or not.
I prefer you did, Mayor.
I know you wouldn't, but there again, I vented to you for about 45 minutes this afternoon. But the enforcement of our ordinances and our state laws, and
I'm good with that
particularly in regards to keeping our city safe and clean, should be a priority of this council. Does everybody up here agree with that?
Yes.
In that regard, addressing the panhandling problem, do we consider this a priority of this council?
That's a far different question, Mayor.
In relation to that statement,
The ordinances and laws of this state, you are rock on. I want you to be in that category. I think that is in the best interest of the city to be in that category. When you talk about panhandling, that's not as clear a category. I want to keep you in clear zone. I want to
I
keep
know
you
where
rock
you want us
on.
to go, but that's not going to stop me from venting frustration with not our efforts, but our results. Our results are such that every day during lunch the past week, I've driven down, up and down Dunlawton, down to the river, and I see just as many, if not more, panhandlers working our streets than I did a month or 6 weeks ago. Saw a new one yesterday. Saw a lady on Ridgewood Avenue down by Dunlawton holding a sign. She was panhandling, and she had a a pull cart with her, and out of the pull cart was hanging a leg, and I had to look for a second, but the leg did move. It was a hot afternoon. I mean, but all the same, I can't, like I said, I cannot argue with our efforts. I think they've been all over the place. This is one tool in the toolbox. I've got to challenge legal. I've got to challenge the city manager, who's got to challenge his department heads to really, what can we do to make this better? Because we can't afford to let this go backwards. Every day where we suffer another loss with this is another day where it gets easier, and we embolden the people who do this. And when we read, I don't know about y'all, but the citizen survey, there's 60 pages of comments. I'm still reading them. I haven't been able to get through all of them. There are a lot of comments on there about, there was one in there, a lady felt like she did not feel safe running at night because the problem is, now public safety is just as much about perception as it is reality. And if she doesn't feel safe, then she's not safe. But there are a lot of comments. So I've got to just say that, and yes, I'm venting a little bit, but I've got to challenge us, not so much with our efforts. Maybe we need to fine tune our efforts, but we need to get some results.
So many times, Mayor, up here and on the staff, we address the symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
The crux of the problem is not be mad at these people for what they're doing to try to make a living. If you want to stop that from happening, stop giving them money. They are here to make money. If they don't make money, they don't stay here.
Correct.
So we keep on looking at them with the evil eye, and we keep on saying how dare they, and then we give them $50, $150, $200 a day. We have to find, and you know I'm working with the chamber to try to find ways to encourage a culture of giving to the right nonprofits and the right people here in the county that can help the people that need to be helped, and discourage, again, anybody from standing in the public right of way with a sign asking for money. There are people that do it right. My kid, we all know most of our kids do soliciting in front of Publix, in front of Winn-Dixie. They ask for permission. They stand outside of these places. They're very respectful. They get about the same, if not more money, and they walk on about their way. Boy Scouts do it. The Girl Scouts do it. Everybody does it. Now that's on private property. I got that, and they do it with permission. But you stop doing it. I'll tell you, my kid goes to Publix at Westport because that's where they make the most money. They don't go to somewhere else. That's where they make the most money. They do it on Sunday. So they don't go places where they don't make money.
And Mayor, they are soliciting for recognized charitable purposes.
Oh, that's the other caveat.
Let's not get off topic too much, and I agree
Well,
wholeheartedly with that, because I think we do two things when we give money to a panhandler. We have hearts and we want to help, but we're also emboldening two problems. One is the public safety problem they can create, because that only emboldens them more. And the second problem is instead of giving money to a legitimate charity that can help them, where 100% of the money would help them, we're actually giving money where 10% of it might go to food, the other 90% of it is going to go to booze and drugs and things like that.
Cigarettes.
So, and actually, we're encouraging the problem instead of helping. So we're actually going in the wrong direction. And I've just got to say, I'm going to vote for this because this is one tool. But along with this has got to be a top to bottom community effort if we're going to solve this problem. Because the longer it goes on, so much as one day, the harder it is to go back to the way it was before. And I'm not unsympathetic. I want to help people that need help, but this is not the way to do it. Especially when I see one of them get in their car and drive home at the end of the day. I'm done venting for now.
Well, I think what your last statement there, that's a huge part of the public perception flaw, is that many people, as soon as you see somebody standing there asking for money, thinks that that person is in dire straits and homeless. And we know for a fact that is frequently not the case.
Correct.
In fact, many times they've got more money in their pockets than the person who is giving them more money. We have seen that time and time and time again. And you're right. They park cars 3 blocks away, they change clothes, they get in their cars, and they drive home. Or they go down to Ormond and they stand on Granada. They go down to New Smyrna and they stand on 44. I mean, I've seen some of these same folks. It's almost like a business structure of going to these different places based on traffic flows and timelines. And you're right. And I agree with a lot of Jake's comments in terms of, you know, people that want to give. I think that is a great thing to want to do. But we need to be trying to encourage the best we can to give those to the right organizations that can provide services for people who truly need it.
Well, now that we're all done venting up here, let me allow the public. Anybody here care to speak to this item? Hey, stranger.
Brendan?
Brendan Gavrith, owner of Mant Catfish and 4190 Halifax. Great debate on the last subject. I mean, you guys are some sharp people up there, so I just got educated on just a proper debate. So I appreciate that effort you guys give, and a disagreement, but the way you guys do it's awesome. But Jake, I mean, your comment earlier, we can take the politicians off the sidewalk. No more signs. Totally good with that. They don't have to have access to it. They could be lumped in with other groups. So. Great idea. No problem with that.
Not up for 4 years. It's fun.
Have this whole paper written up. Great speech prepared. Not going to read it. I think what I'm just heard just through this little, great conversation you guys had is it's really 2 different issues. It's not, in my mind, it's not a panhandling issue. It's for me, I guess I'm going to be selfish and tell you what I know about my property. Maybe it is in other parts of town, so I can't speak to that. I'm going to speak to my situation. My situation is a harassment, is a berating of my customers, is vulgarity in front of minors, is talking inappropriate to my minor or my employees, period, but specifically female minor employees in and out of work, coming in and out of work, making inappropriate comments. And I read the ordinance today, and I didn't know about the first reading, but I'm here tonight. I read the ordinance today, just became aware of it, to be honest with you. It has no teeth for what my issue is. Has no teeth for what my issue is.
Right.
Talks about excluding right-of-ways. My issue is in a right-of-way. Has no teeth for a sidewalk issue. Totally think it's a good thing. Doesn't accomplish any of our goals. Scott, you certainly know the law better than me because of your past career, but can you, harassment, loitering, all those terms,
well, the comments
bullying's in school, but bullying,
the comments to the minor females,
all
inappropriate
that-
comments in
I
general.
have to assume at some level that becomes illegal. How do you catch them in the act? How do you video them? How do you get the words coming out of their mouth? We all understand the challenge of that. But that's my issue. Where's the teeth that can be enforced by the officers on the street? I don't think it's there. I think great ordinance, great start, doesn't accomplish what I need. Doesn't accomplish what my customers need, doesn't accomplish what my employees need to provide, stable paychecks for their family, have long. I always preach to my employees, I want you to work here as long as you want to. I understand most of you will leave me at some point because the type of job I provide, busboy, expeditors, grown up through high school, college, at some point most of them will leave, and that's cool, I'm good with that. But I want the ones that don't want to leave to work as long as they want to retirement if that's what they want. And that's what I am in fear of, is this could begin to chip away at that process within our business. And we've had specific, I've emailed all you guys, haven't emailed you, but I didn't realize you're on yet, so you'll get on the list. But
and we appreciate
Congratulations, Marilyn.
I'm done. No teeth, and we need more. Okay.
Thanks, Brandon.
Mayor, sorry.
I'm sorry, just before you. So I just specifically, because I know you've emailed us quite a bit and into your specific, some of your issues, I do think there are solutions to a lot of your issues. That unfortunately, the way sometimes that the legal process works, it has to go through certain steps and channels. And just for an example, like a lot of the things I've seen you describe, in my opinion, with my background, constitutes disorderly conduct, disorderly intoxication, maybe some child abuse stuff there. There's some things there. But what we need to have going on there is we're going to have people that are going to commit to helping us solve that. And it's not always quick. And I think that's what a lot of the frustration is we want a very quick, hey, this happened, go do something about it. We want to do something about it too, but we got to go through some processes. And that is, we need to get some of those folks who are victims of those things to be willing to file the police report, write the statement affidavit, sign the charges, allow that to go to the state attorney's office, allow the state attorney's office to if they think there's probable cause, to issue a warrant and to do that process. And I get that it can be lengthy at times, but it is effective, but it takes time. But what we see time and time again is a lot of folks, it happens, they write something about it on social media, and then they blast your business. And I think that's horrible. And I can feel the pain that you're having with that. And I wish there was a quicker, easier process. Your business particularly is a good example because part of the area where there's a problem is actually owned by the state of Florida. It's not ours, and you've got areas that are private property. That's great. That gives us a lot of help, as you know, because it's your property. And so I think there are some things there. I think we just need to continue to work at trying, and I kind of hope that some of the regulars and some of the folks that come there and really have enjoyed your businesses for years will step up and help you and say, hey, the next time this person does that and I witness it, I'm going to be part of the solution. I'll help you file the report. I'll fill out the statement affidavit. We'll sign the charges, that type of stuff. And I know that's not what everybody wants to do. They just want to go to dinner.
I'm relying on the public
that.
to make decisions. I mean, and you talk about don't give money. I mean, you're talking about a bunch of people from Georgia, Tennessee who are here for one shot. How are you going to educate the world?
Put somebody out in the parking
lot.
Put somebody out in the parking lot and tell them as they walk in, look, we're trying to get rid of this guy. You're not helping. And oh, by the way, that's one of the things that the chamber is working on. So, so we haven't forgot about you, Brendan.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Brendan.
Anyway, I would say that's a yes. Anyone else care to speak to the item?
Jonathan and I were talking, we should have brought popcorn tonight for the entertainment here tonight. So.
Tom, I'd like you to ask you to stay out of the Ant Catfish parking lot.
I moved my office away from there. So, hi, Tom Jordan, 5400 South Williamson. I'm really here to talk about encouraging you to vote for this and pass it. It's an important ordinance, and I kind of liken it to the theory of broken windows. If you've got an abandoned building, broken windows in it, maybe a church, let's say. If those windows aren't fixed, you tend to get vandals in, kids in. It tends to get more and more broken windows. Eventually they break in and they damage it. And it really brings down and decays the neighborhood. This is really what's happening here. This ordinance can help solve that in one particular area. It's well written, it's specific, it targets repeat offenders. So we know who it's aimed towards. It's not going to be totally subjective, and it has a specific provision so that they can appeal. If there's an issue like that and they want to appeal it, they can. So I think it's well written. It covers a lot of the issues that we at least need to start dealing with, and it helps the community take ownership of the issues. And I think that's, as Brandon was saying, one of the things, and Scott was saying, if the community starts to take ownership of those issues, we can help overcome these issues. And the code enforcement and policing comes along with that. But thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Tom. Anyone else care to speak to this item? Who's this guy?
All right. Jonathan Foley, 629 Herbert Street. I also want to voice my support for this. I understand it's just a first step for a lot of this, for the issue that's going on, and we all know it. I also want to voice that I do believe this is an education thing as well as it is an ordinance thing. A lot of people don't understand. They believe they're doing the right thing, and we all have good hearts. I'm in a church full of people that I believe have very good hearts, and we have some frequent flyers who come through our parking lot on Sunday afternoons. So I see this a lot, and I understand the issue. But I also want to take a quick second to commend you up here on the dais, because and staff and everyone that's working on this, this is not an easy thing to do, to stay within the law and still trying to accomplish this. But it, I believe, is a good step in the right direction, and I want to make sure you guys get a little bit of public commendation just for doing what I believe is the right thing, and know that a lot of the public appreciates your efforts. So thank you guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Appreciate
Who
it.
else? Anybody else? Back to us. Final comments? There being none, call the roll.
Councilwoman Ford.
Yes.
Councilman Bastian.
Yes.
Councilman Stiltner.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Tremont.
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes, 5-0. With that, we're going to take a 10-minute recess before we continue. Item 19, first reading of ordinance number 2019-23. If council is amenable, since items 19 and 20 are related, I'm going to go ahead and read both ordinances, and we can open them both at the same time. Is council okay with that?
That'll be fine. Do I motion to approve both at the same time?
I'll read this one and then make the motion, and then I'll read the next one and make the motion, then it'll be open for discussion.
Copy.
Ordinance number 2019-23 is an ordinance of the City of Port Orange, Volusia County, Florida, relating to comprehensive planning, amending the future land use map of the comprehensive plan, amending future land use designation for plus or minus 4.26 acres from office residential transition to urban medium density residential, providing for conflicting ordinances, severability, and providing for an effective date.
Motion to approve ordinance number 2019-23.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second on that one. Ordinance number 2019-24. An ordinance of the City of Port Orange, Volusia County, Florida, rezoning property consisting of approximately plus or minus 4.74 acres located on the west side of Riverside Drive, east of Ridgewood Avenue, and Planned Unit Development, PUD, and R-7SF Single Family Residential, to PUD, and approving a master development agreement and conceptual development plan for the Harbor Landings PUD, providing for conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Motion to approve ordinance number 2019-24.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Both item 19 and 20 are open for discussion. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. Penelope Cruz, Planning. Subject property is located on the west side of Riverside Drive, east of Ridgewood Avenue, between Breaks Way and Seminole Avenue. The overall property is 4.7 acres. The first item before you is for a future land use amendment that is only for the area shown in blue, which is approximately 4.26 acres. Back in 1999, the subject property, or a portion of it, about 4 acres of it, was rezoned PUD, and it was approved for a 49-unit townhome development called Oak Harbor Townhomes. That development was not constructed, and that MDA has since expired. The additional areas being added that you see here in the corner are two existing single-family residents that the property owner has purchased and is looking to incorporate into this current proposed PUD. So the first item before you is a request to change the future land use designation of that 4.26 acre portion of the property from office residential transition, which is a mixed-use category that allows for office, commercial, institutional, and multifamily uses, to a lower density, single-family, urban medium density residential category. The proposed amendment is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the city's comprehensive plan, particularly those that encourage mix of land uses and expanding housing choices in infill and underutilized land within the city. The proposed future land use category is compatible with adjacent properties and reduces the overall intensity of the development allowed on the property. And all public facilities have been reviewed for adequate capacity to accommodate the proposed amendment. The second item is the rezoning to PUD and approval of the Harbor Landings Master Development Agreement and Conceptual Development Plan. If approved, the owner intends to develop the subject property as a residential subdivision consisting of 10 single-family lots and 16 townhome lots, as well as associated subdivision improvements. The proposed PUD before you has been through the Staff Development Review Committee, which includes reviewers from Community Development, Fire, Police, City Attorney, Public Works, and Public Utility Departments, which have all reviewed the proposed development for compliance with the city's land development code and other national standards to support and all support the proposed design. As you can see, access to the proposed development will be provided from a private road that is connected to Riverside Drive and Ridgewood Avenue. Access, parking, landscaping, and tree preservation all meet or exceed the city's land development code regulations. PUD zoning does, however, allow an applicant to request some flexibility from standard code requirements in order to accommodate unique design. The City Council tonight will need to consider the following 4 deviations from the city's land development code regulations. The first one is regarding open space requirements for PUDs. For PUDs, the city's land development code requires 60% of the overall property to be designated as open space, 20% of which is common open space. This 60% PUD requirement is feasible with larger PUDs. This particular one is a little over 4 acres, typically a little bit more challenging in the smaller PUDs. The proposed Harbor Landings PUD also has the added unique challenge of having additional impervious area because of the unique internal access drive that was specifically requested by staff. Staff asked the developer to consider designing the single-family homes with rear-loaded driveways from an internal road to reduce the number of individual driveway curb cuts for each single-family lot along Riverside Drive. The rear-loaded design allows for less interruptions and safer traffic flow along Riverside Drive. According to the applicant, the PUD provides significant open space, conservation areas around trees, common open space for a smaller scale PUD of this size with more focus on the common areas. If you do look at this PUD and you take into consideration the overall open space for the PUD, plus the common open space being provided, as well as the private open space on individual lots, that actually yields approximately 3.2 acres, which is 67% over that 60% threshold of the 4.7 acre property that would be open space in one form or another. Oops, jumping ahead of myself. The second policy consideration before you is with regard to the maximum building coverage for the 16 townhome lots. Those are the ones shown in the blue color here. The Land Development Code has both a maximum building coverage and a minimum open space requirement per lot that varies based on zoning category. According to the applicant, the focus of this PUD is to provide more common open space. They're providing 33.7% rather than the minimum 20% required by code for the enjoyment of all the homeowners in the PUD, rather than providing that private open space on individual lots. This creates less yard maintenance by individual homeowners and allows for more of those existing trees on this property to be preserved in common areas. The third item is regarding a uniform lot width for the 10 single-family lots, which you see here in yellow along Riverside Drive. The Land Development Code requires corner lots to be 15% larger than interior lots. There are two corner lots. You can see this one right here and this one right here. In this proposed PUD that are located along a private road. These two corner lots have been designed to accommodate the same building footprint as the interior lots to create an aesthetically uniform appearance. The layout maintains the visual clearance angles required by Land Development Code, but the typical larger side corner yards have been incorporated into the development's overall common open space. So the last item before you is for a policy consideration is regarding reducing the minimum right-of-way width from 50 feet to 25 feet for the private road. The Land Development Code requires private or public roads within a residential subdivision to be developed with a 50-foot wide right-of-way. That includes 20-foot wide paved street, curbing, parkage on either side of the road, a 4-foot sidewalk on either side of the road, and the utilities. As you can see here in these graphics here, this is the one on the top left is the access drive off Riverside. The next one is the access drive off Ridgewood Avenue, and then here's the internal loop road. The proposed private road provides generally the same constructed improvements in less space, with 24 feet of pavement for the two access drives, which you can see right here, and 20 feet clear pavement for the internal loop. So the only difference between what the 50-foot right-of-way is requiring in the standard construction detail for the city and what they're requesting here is basically that there's no parkage on either side, that extra green space that we have, and then the 5-foot sidewalk on just one side of the street rather than the 4 on either side. So with that, staff is recommending approval of both items, the future land use amendment, the rezoning, and the approval of the Harbor Landings PUD Master Development Agreement and Concept Plan. Here to answer any questions you may have. The applicant is also here and I believe has a presentation for you tonight. So whatever your pleasure is.
Before we get to that presentation, any questions of Penny?
Yes.
Meryl?
No questions.
None yet, anyway? Chase?
Yeah, just I want to highlight one aspect of it. You know, first of all, I'm okay with everything. I think we need to be out of the box out there in Ridgewood. So, but I did want to read a portion of an email from a concerned resident, and you addressed it, but I'd like to address it again just to highlight it out. The idea of an entrance onto Riverside Drive will be very detrimental to traffic flow south of this property and on Main Street as an access to US 1. Riverside Drive is basically one lane south of this property, and although Main Street is 2 lanes, it already has fairly heavy flow for the neighborhood. It's a sleepy community. I believe this adversely affect us, even though, you know, this person is understandable of the project. But how are we able to, you know, with growth always comes pain, but how are we able to alleviate as much as possible the additional traffic?
So that was what we've been working on over this past year. So, and the applicant can speak to this a little bit more. This came in very different about a year ago, and staff worked for a while with the applicant to get a plan in front of you that created the least amount of impacts to the surrounding existing neighborhood. Originally came back in with 49 townhomes. Got it down to 26 units, 10 single family, 16 townhomes. It also came back with curb cuts, 10 curb cuts, actually 11. The main drive plus an individual driveway cut for each of those homes. Got it down to 1 on Riverside. Originally, it only had the 1 access point, but we heard from the community. We've been to some neighborhood meetings, also been in contact through email groups with concerned residents in the area, and we heard their concerns that they didn't like having just the 1 access point on Riverside. They really wanted the access on US 1 as well. So we went back to the drawing table, got the development team to add that other access point as well.
Okay.
That's the best I can offer right now. The applicant's here, if you'd like to
No,
look
I'm
into anything
satisfied
else.
with that.
Mhm.
Penny, so none of the single-family homes will have a driveway on Riverside Drive.
No, sir.
They'll all enter.
Correct, they're all
and- okay.
backloaded. These are sidewalk connections.
Okay.
Their driveways are back here, rear loaded on this loop road.
Okay.
Yep.
The road is a private road?
Correct.
Correct? The width concerns me. 20 foot of pavement on the interior loop road, right?
So for a 2-way road, we only require 20-foot clear
Mm-hmm.
pavement, then you've got curbing, and then you've got the parkage and sidewalk.
Okay.
We've got the 20-foot clear for a 1-way road. So it still meets
What-
the constructed standards of a standard city road for less traffic than would be going on there.
I get it. The concern is when the lawn maintenance truck comes and parks in the road and they don't go right to the edge, and then a delivery truck comes and then somebody gets sick and the fire truck has to come. How are they gonna get by?
There would still be more room than would be typically there because it's only one-way traffic. And it was reviewed by PD and by the fire department, and they've all signed off on
Okay,
on
are they
this.
gonna allow on-street parking?
No, it's actually written in their master development agreement that on-street parking is prohibited.
Okay. Okay,
Scott?
'cause no- okay.
I'm sorry, Drew.
No,
I
that
thought
makes
you were
it a
done.
little more easier to swallow that they can't have on-street parking, but
It makes all the
you know
difference in the world.
it will
Yeah.
happen. Somebody will come and park in the street, their visitor or whatever, somebody's
they-
gonna park in the street.
And they meet the parking standards of the code for both the single family and the townhome. They have visitor parking spaces as well. Obviously, we can't control all human behavior.
No, I get it.
But it is prohibited in their PUD to park. So it'll be upon the HOA to whether they want to enforce that themselves or if they want to contract with
Sign
PD
it,
to enforce that when
okay.
when this actually comes back before you as a subdivision.
It's amazing what happens
Because right
when
now
you
we're
have
at
neighbor
zoning and
peer
land
pressure
use.
as well.
Okay.
But it'll come before you as a subdivision plat and plans as well, and at that point, they'll have to make a decision if they're gonna enforce their own regulation through their covenants and restrictions, or if they're gonna
Or-
contract out with PD to enforce that.
It will not be gated, correct?
There is a gate proposed off Ridgewood, not on Riverside.
Okay.
Maybe you just answered it. How can they have a no on-street parking if isn't that public right away?
No, it's a private road.
Private road.
Private.
On Halifax? This
No,
is
no, this is-
the other road you're talking about, not
No, yeah,
not
this
Halifax.
is,
Okay.
this is a public road, yeah, so if there's
Okay.
room in the public right of way, people have the right to park there.
Okay.
Internally, where everyone's driveways are and when people will be coming to meet them, internally in the development,
Thanks
it's
for the
not allowed.
clarification.
Scott?
And that is my concern. Is parking's gonna be a problem, and they're gonna go park all over the place, other than inside that development. They're gonna park on Halifax, they're gonna park in Harbor Oaks, they're gonna park in the businesses across the street. These developments like this look great on paper, but what we're starting to see in our community is this high density stuff with these narrow streets and lack of parking. It's just, everybody's got as many bedrooms as you got, there might as well be a car and a half. It seems like it's just the way it is nowadays. I mean, it's like that in my neighborhood, right? I mean, it's like that in my home, but it's just these higher density things, because we're talking about 5.6 units an acre, roughly.
The current future land use is 10 units per acre.
Yeah, I know. I
So
got
that's
it.
that's a plus at least that
And
we're
it's-
going
and
down.
it's- And it's tough because this is a piece of property that for decades we haven't seen anything there, and at times it's very blightful looking and overgrown and
At times?
no,
At all
just
times.
just for the last 30 years, but no, I get it, but it's just tough because these just don't seem to be working out, you know.
Question I have for you is the width of the driveway onto Ridgewood Avenue.
Mhm.
Will that allow for service vehicles to be able to get in and out?
Yeah, Ridgewood Avenue is those have 24-foot
Okay.
pavement.
Standard.
That's not really any different. That's
Standard.
standard than any
Okay.
any normal.
Because I was concerned, because I know we got that wall there
Mhm.
and wanted to make sure there was a wide enough opening.
Yeah.
Because I would like the service vehicles and moving trucks and things like that to have to access it from Ridgewood and not have to access it from Riverside Drive. Okay.
Mayor, I did have two conversations about this. One phone call today, interestingly, was from Ben Toludo, who used to be on council.
I spoke to him too.
He said that one of the proposals, I mean, years ago, was for a adult facility, assisted living, and actually the traffic load at that point was greater than the number of trips here. A question I have, which might address, I get the parking. If you look on page 7, they have front elevation and townhouse elevations. It looks to me like at least 2 of the fourplex, if you will, are double cars. So that does look like an extremely wide drive for some
Yeah.
of the townhouse units.
So I can answer the specific parking being provided. Actually, on page 5 of the staff report. So the single-family homes will have 2-car garages as well as a 2-car width driveway, providing 4 parking spaces per lot for single-family. The townhomes are going to have, and that's code requirement. They're not deviating from land development code on parking. The townhomes are proposed to have a 2-car garage and a 2-car width for the 3-bedroom units, providing 4 parking spaces for the 3-bedroom units. The 3-bedroom townhomes have a single-car garage and a single-car driveway width for the 2-bedroom units, providing 2 spaces per 2-bedroom unit. And then there's 6 visitor spaces shown on the concept plan as well. And like we said, if there is, you have Riverside Drive right away, which right now anyone's allowed to park on. But that is code requirement.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
One more final question. I'm I'm responding to the question that I received regarding the traffic and the response you gave, and I appreciated that. As I'm writing a sentence, I'm saying many of the residents requested additional access, and it prompted me to ask a question. I'm curious, how many residents are we talking about? Because we've been in a situation multiple times. We've heard, well, all the residents over there are all for it. And I want to know, do we have a way, and if not, can we start tracking?
We do.
How many residents we talked to? Okay.
Yeah, so so that particular request regarding the drive actually came out of, there was a public meeting on a different item, but in this area, and there was a room full of, I would say, over 100 people or so there, and that's what came back. They were meeting about something else, but they wanted to talk about this proposed development because they're aware of it, because we have our signs posted and things, and we had brought it to their attention before. So there was a pretty packed room that all said, you know, I really don't like that there's only just one access on Riverside, because then all the traffic has to go on Riverside. We'd really love for them
Sure.
to be able to have a different way to access, not just on Riverside Drive.
And I appreciate.
And
That's probably going to be a consistent question I'll
Mhm.
ask.
We
for
also
future.
had a list of 18 residents that specifically called or emailed that wanted to be on an ongoing notification group. So we would email them before it went to Planning Commission, before tonight's meeting. And so we have all their contact information. We've kept them in the loop as resubmittals have come in, as public hearings have been scheduled.
Good deal. In the future, I'll continue to ask that because I want to be armed.
Definitely.
If I tell someone, hey, you know, people are asking, and they say, well, I haven't been asked, and I don't know anybody else that has. So I appreciate you guys documenting that. Thank you for that.
Welcome.
Why don't we hear from the developer, since you did such a good job of telling us about it, see if he can come up here and talk us out of it.
Penny, one quick question before you
Yes,
walk away.
sir.
The property across the street on Riverside Drive that borders the water, who owns that and has the riparian rights to that?
So as of right now, and it's specifically noted in their PUD, we have not received any documentation to prove that they have riparian rights there. Over time, that right-of-way, the land has receded, has eroded. So at this point, we have not been given enough documentation to prove riparian rights. The PUD document states that until at some point the city is satisfied and we have clear evidence that they have riparian rights, no docks are allowed there.
Okay.
Come on. Penny can sit down, but she has to stay on the edge of her seat.
I
so.
understand. I appreciate it. Thank you. My name is Michael Schmenta, 120 East Granada, and I represent the applicant. Just to be very brief, I wanted to take you through and the public through the history of this. As she said, in 1999, this was approved for 49 townhome units, and this is the project that was approved, so approximately 10 years ago. About a year ago, we came in for a redevelopment of the plan, and we asked staff for their comments, so it has been ongoing for a year. This was the original plan that we came in with to staff, as you can see, and this was in 2017, in fact, so almost 2 years ago, or a little over a year and a half ago. So that was the original iteration. At that point in time, we felt that this met the land development code as it was, with the townhouse units, the duplex really is what they are, and then the single family along Riverside Drive. But after many comments, bunch of negotiations, and a lot of good give and take and design input on all people, this is what had happened. And so, as you can see, some of the issues in your land development code we're not able to meet, but that's because we've gone back and forth with the give and take. I think the most important thing that we've heard from the community is limiting access on Riverside Drive, which we have by removing those driveways that were initially there. These homes are rear loaded, and I'll show you those in just a moment. The road is a single directional loop road, so we were able to provide more open space and preserve some trees by allowing that. And we have worked with your city fire department and EMS to determine that they have clearance in the event of an emergency. This is the project that is overlaid on the aerial, so you can see kind of for the residents there what it'll look like as it relates to the property and the trees. The access on Ridgewood was put in late, but we were able to actually save a couple more trees because originally it was more of a cul-de-sac and an emergency egress. These are the units. That's the townhouse units that we have designed and are actually ready to commence sales. I won't say construction because construction doesn't start till after sales. And this is the homes that will be facing Riverfront Drive. And as you recall, the front of these homes will be facing the water in Riverside Drive. And as we come into the rear, these will be the garage. So this will not be on Riverside Drive. This is what the residents in the community will see.
Are those
yes.
2-car garages?
These are 2-car garages, yes. And there'll be enough for additional 2 cars to park there. So each home will actually have 4 parking spaces in addition to the additional visitor parking that we've provided throughout the community.
What do you expect your clientele to be?
Um,
Retirees, college age?
Uh,
What's your target? What's your target with this?
My client's not here, but I would tell you that they're probably people that want to purchase a home for $400,000 to $500,000. So whether they're retirees or students, you don't know. Townhouses.
Because that makes an impact as to how many people are parking.
No, I agree. I agree with that. But you can tell that the quality of these homes, particularly on Riverside Drive, are significantly more than just a 1,200, 1,400 square foot home. Is that the end of my presentation? Did I get stalled? Yeah. We're stalled. I apologize. I didn't do too well here with your thing. So that's kind of the project. We're here to answer any questions. We won't take up any of your time. The planning board gave us a nice review, and we're pleased that this project is coming and that the end of this property sitting fallow, the wall was fixed, was hopefully on the horizon, and as long as the economy stays with us, my client is anxious to get started. So again, we're here to answer any questions of yourselves or the public. We can do it now or afterwards. Thank you.
You might want to hang out.
Okay.
Just want to make sure everybody up here got a chance to grill you.
Okay.
Scott? Drew?
No, I mean, I appreciate you coming back with a lesser impact. 49 would be way too much for that particular property. Happy to see there's some interest in it after, what, nearly 3 decades, maybe 2.5 decades. So, it looks like it'll fit, and good luck with it.
No, we appreciate that. Appreciate it.
Jason, other questions?
I'm good. Thank you.
Marilyn?
No.
Mayor, real quick, are you going to speak? I just want you to know that I appreciate everything that the developer did in this past year with staff, and staff. Thank you, Penny and Tim and the team in collaborating with this. This is exactly what I think US 1 needs, and I think you'll spark a little beautiful development down south of Dunlawton. I might move, and I know there was a lot of give and take. So I appreciate you and your team's meeting us in the middle on this. I really do.
If I could just comment to that, I do work in a lot of jurisdictions and been doing this for a little over 20-something years, and sometimes you go into other jurisdictions and they tell you no, but your staff was saying, we're not happy about this, but have you thought about this? So it really was collaboratively. They came to us with solutions rather than just no's and negatives to try to get a project that's better. And at the end of the day, I think if my client were here, he'd say the end product is actually better than the one that we came in with. So thank you,
The whole
too.
idea.
Do you have any, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Do you guys have any other similar projects like this that you guys have completed that are in the Florida area? Or?
Not in this area. The developer is both in residential and commercial through the region. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay.
Mayor, thank you.
Now you're released. Anyone here care to speak to the item? That brings it back to us. Council, any other questions of the developer or of staff, or other comments? Scott, we'll start with you.
No, I don't have any more. I mean, it's an area of the city that I think needs a good quality project. It's a piece of land that has definitely brought some blight at times in that area, and my biggest concern is going to be parking, traffic. Hopefully, like Chase is talking about, the base of this is going to bring in a group of folks that are going to have concern with that and monitor that. I am happy that it's not a public street, because I really don't want anything to do with that in there, honestly.
Neither do I.
Because I think that's a lot of times where we are finding ourselves, getting ourselves in a jam. Some of these communities where the density's there and they're public streets, and it's great, it's a 2-car garage, two double wide driveway, and there's still 3 cars parked in the street and on the grass and over the sidewalk and all that stuff. So that would be my concern there, but it does look like a nice project.
Drew?
I don't have anything further. No.
Chase?
You know, every time we have a new project, you know, there's pros and cons. Growth brings jobs, it adds to the economy, and everyone is stepping in the way of that, but you're always going to make somebody mad with it. But this area is long overdue for sure.
Marilyn?
No comments.
Okay.
Smart growth?
I am, I'm a couple of things along the lines of smart growth that I'm happy about, that we decreasing the theoretical maximum that this probably could have yielded. And then, of course, near and dear to my heart is the preservation of specimen trees that this project holds on to. I absolutely hate that, that the first instinct is to cut everything down and replant, whereas there's some very nice old oaks in there that I think will actually add an awful lot of charm to the project and complement it well. So I'm appreciative of that. No other comments? Call the roll.
Councilwoman
I'm sorry.
Ford.
Hold on just a second. Call the roll on ordinance number 2019-23 so that we're clear.
All right. Councilwoman Ford.
Yes.
Councilman Bastian.
Yes.
Councilman Stiltner.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Tremont.
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes. Call the roll on ordinance number 2019-24.
Councilwoman Ford.
Yes.
Councilman Bastian.
Yes.
Councilman Stiltner.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Tremont.
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes, 5-0. Good luck, build it well. Presentation of 2019 Citizen Survey Report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Alan Rosen, Assistant City Manager. So what we have before you tonight is nothing new. Everything is in the report. This is just a very broad summary. And I will try to go quickly over some of the stuff that's just more informational. And just keep in mind that everything is in the report. And when we were working to get this up on the website, so more people, not this, but the report, so people can see it, and that it's available as an OCR readable document. So it just takes a little time because there's a lot of charts and graphs in it, and you've got to do a lot of extra work to get it to there. So topics I'm going to cover are the methodology, how we went about doing this, the scores, and conclusion. So the survey duration this year was 53 days from January 21st through March 15th. It's longer than we normally do. I was trying to get a little more participation because it had dropped off in the last couple of years, and you'll see that, not tremendously, but a little bit. I was trying to figure out ways to get more participation. And giving people a longer chance to do that is one of those ways. So another thing we did, changes that we made, is we reduced the number of questions. What we do every year is we look at the questions that people answer, the questions that people don't answer at all, and the questions that people may or may not answer that don't really reflect into any of the analysis that we do. Not that it's not pertinent or exciting or interesting, but it's information that we haven't used, and there's no point in asking those questions if we're not going to use the information. And the shorter you make a survey document, the more likely is somebody's going to actually finish it. So you can see here the number of survey questions that we've reduced over the next couple of years. The other way we reduce it is, by asking those department directors, is this information even useful to you? Are we asking the right question? Are you going to be able to use this to help better manage your department when you get the information? So there are some questions that get added, some that get taken away. So the number of survey responses this last year went up significantly from the year before, and this is the number of valid survey responses. So what I do is I look through the data, and I see there are a number of instances where you have the same IP address, and the person may have gone in there and answered like some of the demographic information, and then left their computer, went in again, and started it again, and then answered the whole thing. So I don't really use those survey responses where people don't really answer anything. Sometimes I also look for people that are putting the same answer over and over and over and over and over again from the same computer. I don't see a lot of that, but if it does happen, I try to weed those out. And you can see here we've increased a lot. In 2011, 2012, we were still using a paper process. I believe in 2013, this is before my time, it became an electronic process. We got a lot more responses. And then in 2014, 15, somewhere around there, we started using SurveyMonkey. We still do that. And again, you see here that we've had a bump. And I think another reason we had a bump this year is as we had it open longer than we normally do, we also kept pinging people to say, hey, it's still open, you can still take it. Where in prior years, we just kind of sent the notice out once and just let them come in. So reliability, in terms of, what does it mean? There's calculations to determine how reliable the answers you're getting are based on the total population and versus the sample size that you collect. We, based on the sample size of 1880 and the population of 60,000, it gives you a confidence level of 99% that the margin of error that you're going to see overall if you asked everybody would be within about 3%. So another thing with the change in the format, I was talking to a survey methodologist, PhD at Embry-Riddle, and asked him for a little bit of help, just on the side. And he suggested that we change it to a sliding scale. So before we had radio buttons, we changed it to a sliding scale and kind of asked everybody just move it along the scale as you would based on what you think the answer to this question would be. So that's another change that we made. Another change that we made before we get to fire rescue was what we found in prior years is people were answering some of the questions without ever having used that service. So they're answering the question based on anecdotal evidence, really. And we really wanted to narrow it down to people who were more likely to have used that service and say, okay, you used that service, how did we do? So for some of the departments, what we did is we put a single question before they got to that department and said, hey, have you used the fire service in this last year? And if the answer was no, it skipped that department and went to the next one. If the answer was yes, they were able to answer the question. Now, if they were savvy enough, they could have gone back, answered the question a different way and still answered it. But so fire rescue, overall satisfaction was about 97.4%. What I mean by in terms of satisfied, people responding to it were either between somewhat satisfied and extremely satisfied. And that's kind of how we asked the question and kind of how I put it together. Now you see here the extremely satisfied category. This was the highest score by far for any question, any department, was fire rescue. And of course, they're the heroes, they're coming to save you. And hopefully people like them and want them to come save them. So, but their overall satisfaction between somewhat and extremely was about 97.4%. And to go to police, again, not to knock police, sometimes their customers are people that are telling them they've been doing bad things. And they may not be as happy about that. But still, within that, how satisfied are you? The extremely satisfied actually is quite high for some of the questions that we asked. And overall satisfaction between somewhat and extremely is 84%. One of the things to point out here, one of the questions we asked, the stuff that the public and you are seeing right now are only a small sample of the questions for the overall survey. I kind of am just going to the overall satisfaction for each department and then maybe pointing out some other things that are interesting. So this one was interesting too. This was the second highest extremely satisfied score, which was the response time to emergency situations. People felt that, for the most part, that we are responding timely to their emergency situation for the police department. Parks and Recreation overall satisfaction, 97%. Again, a high number of people felt that they were extremely satisfied. And when I looked at the comments, and when you look through the comments, what I gathered that from Parks and Recreation is that people really love what they have in Parks and Recreation, and most of their main comments are, we want more. So that's how they feel. They love the parks. You give them what they love, and it's never enough. Want some more. Community development was another department that I asked the question because a lot of people day to day in their lives don't really have any connection with community development unless they're looking for a permit, they're building something, that sort of thing. The people that answer the question, 83.5% of the people feel somewhat satisfied or more. I've said in the report, and I'll say here too, in prior years what I did is I compared this year versus prior years because we asked a lot of the questions vary the same way. Since I changed so much, I want to be very cautious about comparing last year's results or prior year's results with this one. But I will say that if you did
that was going to be my number one question because
you're used to seeing that.
Well, that's how we deduce whether we've improved or not on something.
So you can. I've mentioned certain places in the report where I say, look, I've made that caveat. You don't want to compare too much because the questions have changed, and you just statistically you can't do it. But if you were to say, okay, if it seems somewhat the same, it's not too different. You look at the scores, some of them have improved. This is one of the ones I would say I think my general satisfaction with community development last year was somewhere in the 70s. and this year it's somewhat in the 80s. Again, it's hard to compare, but I think part of that is due to the fact that the people that are answering the questions are generally the ones that are using the service, not anecdotal, like, you won't believe I went there and this happened, and they don't know, they weren't there. So it's those people that are using the service. Public information, most of the people felt, yeah, we're doing a good job with public information. You can see here there's a little bit of a inverted scale here. So the people that are extremely satisfied are a little bit lower than the people that are somewhat, and yeah, it sounds pretty good. Overall, 93%, which is pretty good. And when I looked at the statements, the open-ended statements, I don't remember, there may have been one. There may have been only one, if any, about public information. So what that gave me is people kind of are lukewarm about it. It's not really something they care about. And I know that sounds bad, but they care about the police and the public works and the fire. Public information is just something we do to get our information out there. It's not really something I think they're really in tune with and don't really care that much to really make an open-ended comment about it. Public utilities, overall satisfaction at 94.5%, between somewhat satisfied and extremely satisfied. I always like taking a look at the quality of drinking water. That's another question I ask them. And it's pretty even between the somewhat satisfied and extremely satisfied. Again, more towards the, yeah, it's fine, about 87% overall. And I took a look at every year, cities put out a water quality drinking report. And for the past couple of years, we've led in some categories. This year, I think we led in one category. When I say lead, I mean we had the least contaminants in a category than all the other cities. Whenever I do this report, some of the reports are out for the current year and some of them are not. So it's hard to compare because I have to combine. I just don't have all the information. So this is that's what people felt about the quality of the drinking water. And I think I put that information in the report too as they're looking at it to see. I don't know if I did it for that one, but sometimes I like to give them the information and then have them respond. Public Works overall satisfaction, 95%. One of the things we asked them was, how about garbage collection? And this was tied for the second highest extremely satisfied score, which was interesting because then when I looked at the open-ended questions, some people were really upset about some things that happened, and some people were really positive about the garbage pickup. So it was a little bit mixed, but when they answered this question, they felt that they had a good response to the service that they get. Value of services. This is another question I ask. I kind of tell everybody, hey, this is for this last year, this is our millage rate, this is our taxes per capita, so that they can compare. Because most people, to be honest with you, if I didn't work in government, I probably wouldn't know 1% of what I know because I work in government. People are busy living their daily lives. It's not something they pay attention to all the time because they're just busy doing other things. Not that it's not important. So I give them some context and then let them answer the question. And again, most people are between somewhat satisfied and extremely satisfied. About 93% is satisfied with the value that they're getting for what they're paying from the city of Port Orange. Another thing I like to ask is the citywide goals. So we have a strategic plan, and you as a body have decided these are our top 6 things that we're interested in. And I ask every year, I want to see, are we still in tune with the people that are our electorate? Do you guys feel do the electorate feel that we are on tune with what we voted for? So on the left-hand side, you see the council's order of importance of the goals. And then on the right, you see how the people responded. And it's interesting, for the second year in a row, for the first couple of years, it was in the same order. That's not to say everybody voted that way, but the majority of people voted the same way. They felt it was the same order of importance. For the last 2 years in a row, the respondents have started to flip some of the things that they felt were more important than when we adopted these original things. So public safety has always been number 1 for both. That's not changed. And this year was the first year where everything else was in a different spot. So it was just interesting to see that. And what that might, we'll talk about what that might mean in a minute. Overall satisfaction, this is kind of a capture all at the end, like just what's the quality of life for you in general? Think about everything. How do you feel? Again, in terms of being between somewhat satisfied and extremely satisfied, 97.2%. Most of the people feel, yep, it's great to live here, or like, yeah, it's really good to live here. I really love it. So it's a nice score to look at. One of the lowest scores, and this has been true ever since I've been here and measuring this, is transportation mobility. So how people are able to get around. And as you see from the open-ended responses that you'll see in a minute,
Oh, yeah.
there's specific responses related directly to this. And so this was definitely the lowest score. I think, again, it's hard to compare years to years. I think it actually isn't as bad as it used to be. And that's also apparent from the number of the types of comments we got, and we'll see in a second.
What's the problem?
We'll see in a minute. So this is a word cloud. Word cloud is basically when you have an open-ended response, you can have the system pull out the most commonly used words or phrases. And it just kind of puts it in a nice little thing for you and shows you. And I'll show you the count in a minute. But you see here words like better roads, better traffic, less traffic. I don't think they really want better traffic, like make the traffic more awesome. Yeah. So, and Port Orange, some of these words are kind of standalone, like better. But when I looked at it and I searched for better in all the open-ended responses, 80-90% of the time it was talking about traffic, it was talking about roads, it was talking about that sort of infrastructure. That's what it was more related to. And so here you get an idea of the last 3 years of the number of words and phrases and responses, the top 10 or so. And it's always been, you see 2017, 2018, traffic on Dunlawton roads, Dunlawton development, Port Orange traffic lights, that sort of stuff. You take a look at 2019, and again, better is more related to traffic, Dunlawton development, that sort of thing. But the intensity is a little less than it has been in the prior years. So I think people are feeling slightly better about it, but it's still the major thing that's on their mind. It's not going away. And what I found interesting, before I leave that, is that we did have the measure for the half-cent sales tax, and we indicated that if this passes, the things that are very important to us are the things that are important to you. We want to hasten the work that we're going to do on Dunlawton, on Williamson, on those sort of things. And then when it failed, the responses anecdotally that we got is, yeah, we know we knew it, but we just don't want to pay for it, which says to me, we know it's important, but I don't care if it takes a little bit longer. That's kind of the translation for me. But it's still on people's minds. It's still something that they see as an issue. So overall satisfaction, what I do here is I take all the scores that I asked the same way about satisfaction and I just average them all together to kind of see what shoots out. I'm
sorry.
Sure.
But that's not necessarily a bad thing when you say, yeah, we want it, but we don't want to pay for it. I mean, I want a new car right now and I need one. I can't pay for it though. I mean, when reality sets in, I don't want to look at that as a negative thing. That's just sometimes it's a reality.
Yeah, I'm sorry if misunderstood. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying it's a psychological, my undergrad was psychology, so I like to think how people think. Yeah. So overall satisfaction, again, if you add all the scores together, you average them up, most people are extremely satisfied with most of the stuff that we're providing. And overall, between somewhat satisfied, extremely satisfied, 90.7%. So kind of what's the conclusion to draw from this? And there are many, but I try to narrow it down. Like I said before, ongoing issues, transportation mobility. It's on people's minds. It's something that's going to be there for a while, especially as the economy is good, development continues to happen. I heard a city manager say once, we can't stop development, you can only manage it. So, it's something that we have to continue to look at. Goal alignment is another one of those issues. Do we want to look at our strategic plan going forward? Do we want to take into account what people have said and how they've kind of changed their view of what's most important or not, and realign our goals? So it's something to think about for the future. High points, fire service. And the other thing I want to mention is this was actually done before we did EMS transport. So the EMS transport had not been implemented by the time this was over, just to kind of give you an idea of where we were at the time. Garbage collection was a high point, police response times, overall quality of life, and the cleanliness of parks was one of those things that also people really enjoyed. So I'll open it up for questions, but that's just a high-level overview of the citizen survey for this year.
Marilyn, we'll start with you. Questions, comments?
I don't have any questions. I found it interesting. The only thing I would say, I get that you did the margin of error and reliability, but at the end of the day, only 3% of the residents answered. And there are statistics, lies statistics and damn statistics. You can come up with a mathematical number and say, 1,800 people represented 60,000 residents, but from a survey research type of perspective, that's a very poor response rate, and so I guess I would, your conclusion that people are generally happy, I would say that's true based on the non-responses. Because if people were
Right.
really upset,
They'd
they'd be telling us.
Right.
You
A lot
know?
of times people do lead their life by exception.
Yes. So anyways, that's just the other little thing I would put on. I thought you did a great job of talking about what the information may mean. I think it's smart to say, have you used the service in order to rate it? So I think it's impressive that our city is looking at these type of things. So good job.
Thank you. And the other thing I try to do is sometimes I'll look at the responses and we ask them, are you okay contacting you about your responses? And I called a couple of people who were so excited that we actually called, even if it was like a negative response. Wow, you actually called me? You read that? So that was nice. And I do hand that out to all the different department directors and say, you know, people have said that they're okay being contacted. So if you want more in-depth information about what these people are really thinking and feeling, give them a call.
Concur. Chase?
Yeah, I always like reading these. A great comment by Marilyn as well. No news is good news. The lack of response means I think people are generally happy. But I still love seeing these. I read every single comment on here. I always value criticism and critiques and compliments, whatever it may be. I'd like to know what anybody's thinking. I read every email that's sent to me and I respond to every single one of them. A little unsatisfied with the lack of pictures on your PowerPoint tonight.
Yeah, I was getting ready for a
You do
tournament.
set a
I didn't
different
have too much
standard.
on there.
Not the flashiest I've seen, but
Yeah.
Great presentation. Thank you, Alan.
Drew?
Not much. I mean, I found the I haven't finished reading them all yet, but found several comments entertaining and interesting. Dunlawton gets a lot of mention, but there are a few about fees for registering a vehicle, which has nothing to do with us. And so it's just like I say, 1,880 people replied, so it's a small sampling, but it's still, I think it's valuable information to have, for sure.
Scott?
Yeah, I tend to prefer reading a lot of the comments. So I almost said I enjoy reading the comments. But I find it very interesting. I almost wish that for every one of these comments, each one of us by district could respond back, almost from a dialogue and an education perspective. Like when somebody says you need to build more schools, to us, clearly they don't realize that's not our role. And there's lots of comments in here that aren't relative to our role that I would love the opportunity to say, I agree with you. That's not us. This is who does that and does this and stuff like that. And that's frustrating for me. You know what I mean? Same thing with educating folks on growth. To think that a municipality has the legal authority to tell private property owners, done, we're not going to allow you to exercise your private property rights to build within the zoning and things like that. And so I wish there was more opportunity for some of that dialogue with folks when, to make comments, because some of them got some great ideas, I'm sure, and it would be awesome to be able to have that.
There's some good stuff in there.
Yeah, there is, I would have to disagree with my counterpart, Chase Tremont. I think every comment relative to traffic means today, not long term. It meant yesterday.
I wouldn't talk about.
Yeah, no, I'm just kidding. But I think you look at some of these stuff and you try to digest. Okay, what's the pulse of the community and what are the concerns that we can do something about, and you do tend to. I think as you read this, maybe that's human nature. Marilyn brings a great point, the fact that there's X number that don't respond to anything. What does that mean, right? But you had this half-cent sales tax thing where I think, at least for our city, we laid out very specific, detailed projects that said, this is exactly what we will do and only do with this money, right? And you look at how many comments that directly ties to that. And then in your mind, you're like, which is it? you really hate it, you want us to do something about it, but you're not gonna give us the resource to do anything about it, so now what? And there's some, I have some frustration in that, I really do. So I'll continue to read through it. I've read through most all of the comments. I'm gonna reread through all those and try to digest that stuff, and you know, as we go through, as we always do, the practice of revising our goals and objectives for the city to try to figure out, you know, what are the messages here that we can truly grasp on and try to make things better, since that seems to be the key word. But anyway, good information. It's always good information. It's great to have any, you know, feedback from the community, although I wish it was a little bit more two-way. You know, that would be awesome.
I'll tell you what, I'll read these before I read a Facebook comment from people.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, this is real. And I agree. How many free response comments were there? Do you know right offhand?
Gotta be a few hundred.
It's in the report. It says how many there were. I don't remember offhand.
I think it
Maybe
was
like 800 or.
I was going to say it was close to
something like
1,000.
that.
I think
Yeah.
it was.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it is. It's about 50 pages of comments. And certainly what Scott said, some of them apply, some of them don't. I thought the restriction of small airplanes from north-south travel on the beach, move that air traffic corridor offshore another 3 miles. It's, you know, there's some of those, but that's okay to me, because somebody is proud of Port Orange that they think we're even bigger than we really are. I'm okay with that.
Somebody who lives in Wilbur by the sea wants more sidewalks.
Okay. I'll notify the
You
county.
get right on that, okay?
Yeah.
Just not with our money.
We'll provide them sewer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm in love with that. Any other questions or comments? Thank you.
I do want to support that, having a Texas de Brazil restaurant.
Yeah, I like that
Yeah, I
concept.
saw that one too.
Just saying, Jake, if you could get right on that as soon as
Come
possible.
on.
And one of the comments
Prime
was
mover
Taco
in that.
Bell. Well, we made that happen.
That was a Tim Berman incentive right there.
City attorney comments. Margaret, you got a couple of things?
Yes, sir. There are 2 proposed budgets in your agenda items on this set of comments. These are other governmental entities that lie within the city's boundaries. I think some of you may be familiar with the CDD, is what it's called, Short-Term Community Development District. One is located these 2 are located on either side of Williamson. You have one more in the southern part of the city. We've not received that proposed budget yet or any notice of the hearing. The governmental organizations, the CDD, is required to give you formal notice and give you an opportunity to speak to any of the costs or charges involved. They will make the final decision as a governing body, similar to the way this council sets the budget for the city of Port Orange. I just bring this to you for notice, that it's out there, that they're setting their budget. If you have any concerns or any comments you want brought to those governing bodies, we'll carry the water for you.
Thank you. Anything else?
No, sir.
City manager comments.
Yes, sir. Recently, council and staff have been in communications regarding feral cat situation on Church Street. And we're having problems internally, mainly due to lack of personnel to effectively manage that in-house. I think we probably need to have a workshop to discuss it, but recently we've had an influx. If you recall, Mr. Scheibel came to council and talked about both he and his wife becoming ill. His dog has gone blind, and he believes it's due to the neighbor and the feral cats and the non-registered colony at that location. And we currently, inside the city, just don't have an effective program. Jacksonville has one that's pretty effective, but it's kind of run externally by a nonprofit in coordination with the city. We have the CCFAW who's here tonight. I see at least Pat's here. that works with us, but not as formal as the Jacksonville, which is a much bigger city, by the way. And as we're going through the budget right now, I don't have any money budgeted for additional feral cat management, if you will. But council has indicated that they want to take a different stance, possibly, regarding feral cats. And before we go down the workshop and provide direction, I'd like your thoughts on where we stand for that, so I can move forward, adjust the budget if necessary, or find the money, or do a budget appropriation after the fact. But Matt and the attorney's office have helped with some nuisance kind of discussion on nuisance cats. There's law out there, I think it's out in California, 2007, where a cat caused a feral or free range cat caused some issues with a homeowner, and the homeowner went to hold the person that was feeding the cat liable for the damage to this person's house, and they basically said not really, that cat wasn't a cat owner. So the guy kind of got left holding the bag there. So we have some concerns, we have some challenges, kind of like the other challenges we're facing in the city right now, and I'd just like your thoughts on that, on just consensus on whether the status quo is the way you want to go, whether you want to beef it up. Do I want to do an offsite, which I'm trying to get a band together and get a bunch of people up into Jacksonville to see how they do business, to see if we can do business better here in the city.
This end, Scott?
Well, I absolutely want to have some measures in place that no resident in Port Orange should have to go through what Mr. Shiloh's been going through. That is
And still going through.
That is unacceptable.
Crazy.
That is absolutely ridiculous. No resident in the city of Port Orange should have to endure that on their private property. And so we need to have some other options, because as far as I can tell, we've just about tried all of them that we've had at our disposal at this time. So-
Caught a lot of possums.
Right. And so we got to come up with something else. That is not reasonable.
Sure.
I would concur. Yeah, it's a problem.
So Chief Monahan brought a pretty robust guidance on how to proceed, and Chief Grimaldi updated it and brought it to us a couple of years ago. We'll go that approach, and that'll be our departure point. I'll bring that to you all next workshop, not July's workshop, but in August, and we'll chat about it and see where the departure point. And yes, I know the CCFAW is an integral part of that process, and we'll make sure they're here for that workshop as well.
Chase?
Yeah, no, I agree with Scott, and I appreciated the authority in which you expressed that. No resident ought to have to deal with what they've had to go through, nor should any business have to deal with that. We've had some business owners come here and express their problem, and that's and one particular business is right across the little gym where my 3-year-old runs around and went and play in. So I don't know what the answer is, but I know we've got very smart people and very passionate people who are doing it very well. And we have a staff that's willing to make the efforts to do what's right for everybody. So I'll look forward to maintaining that dialogue.
Marilyn?
I agree, we need a workshop.
Okay. What else you need from us on this one, Jay? Moving forward to get ready for that workshop.
Nothing other than it sounds like a commitment to tighten up a little bit. As I mentioned, internal to staff, we have 2 animal control officers, and they fall under the one of the captains in the police force, and 3 people is no longer enough people. Do we have police officers? You bet. Do we have code enforcement? You bet. It's going to be an all hands effort, in addition to the other issues we have that we keep talking about. So one of the options might be an outsourcing contractual thing to get the program in order, and then we can extricate contract to take it over once it's going. I'd like to go up to Jacksonville and see how they do business, get some pointers from them. The county animal control officer has been phenomenal in kind of getting us back going again. So we'll work on those things.
For my part, just having sat on council for this long, and we've been exercising the program we currently have in place at different levels of success or failure for 6-8 years now, I believe. And in some areas we've made progress, and others I've seen where we've gone backwards. So with that in mind, it is absolutely right in my mind to sit down and discuss what we can improve.
Will do.
Okay. With that in mind, I usually don't take public comment, but I know there are a lot of people here that are interested in the subject. We are not going to, we will be having a workshop on the subject, but if there's anything you'd like to add and make a comment right now for things that you'd like us to discuss at that workshop to prepare us, Pat, I'm sure that you've got a thing or two that you might want to share with us. This would be the time.
Good evening. I'm Pat Mahalik from Concerned Citizens for Animal Welfare. I've been here before. You all have a good program going, but it has to be, everybody involved has to be on board with the same program. The program you're talking about in Jacksonville, that's what the model we did here. However, Jacksonville's program is based specifically on animal control doing what's called return to field. It's called a feral freedom program.
Mm-hmm.
Rick Ducharme from the First Coast No More Homeless Pets, they do the spay and neuter. They do not do the enforcement. The city of Jacksonville does the enforcement, and they have almost 100 animal control officers. They have 965,000 people there, so it's almost twice as big as Volusia County.
How many animal control?
They have almost 100 people working there.
Got it.
Yeah, and it's but they were killing 30,000 cats a year in 2008, and to the tune of $3 million to the city. And Rick Ducharme proposed a program called Feral Freedom, and he got large, very huge grants from Best Friends and from PetSmart charities. I mean, to the tune of $500,000 to start his spay-neuter clinic is basically what he does. Well, they went from killing impounding and killing 30,000 cats and escalating. Cats can breed 3 times a year, have 6 kittens a year. They're going to outbreed you. You can capture as many as you want. You're never going to catch up. So they put this program in place called Feral Freedom. And instead of the officers taking the cats to the Humane Society there to be impounded and then euthanized 3 days later, they took them to Rick Ducharme's First Coast No More Homeless Pets, fixed them, and put them back. And the rule was, if you had a problem, you contacted the animal control, and they come out and they told you the cat is coming back, because to take them away and kill them is a total useless waste of taxpayer dollars and time and energy, because they're going to out-reproduce you. Mm-hmm. So they went in 2008, 2017, of the last numbers that I have, they went from 30,000 cats to 1,000 cats. And the 1,000 cats were either injured or not able to go back for whatever reason, had sickness, whatever, or maybe owned cats. Mm-hmm. That was it. So they reduced their budget from $3 million to around $100,000. and that continues now. But their officers did all the work. You don't have that option. That is why we put the trap, neuter, return into place that allowed them to, you have free labor with your residents doing that. You're going to have the man on Church Street, that whole street from Lafayette the whole way down, there are 1 million cats there. One female cat will draw males from a 2-mile radius. So you have an influx of cats coming in all the time.
You're about to wrap up, right?
Yes, yeah. So, but that's what I was going to.
Because you're out of time.
I know, but so a workshop would be good to
Thank you.
do that. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Thanks, Pat.
We'll see you then. She didn't say it all yet? Come on. Absolutely. Come on.
100 animal control officers.
Come on.
Per million population.
So that would be 7.
I've been my name's Cheryl Wild.
Still
I live
too
on
many.
Leslie Street. I've been practicing TNR probably over 15 years. The reason why it's not working here, because I don't know who's not educated. I know your animal control officers are not educated properly on what it is. They still pick them up and take them to get killed, which is costing a fortune, breaking hearts, whatever. If you would get educated, second, implement it the proper way. You can't have 3 people doing it here and nobody's doing over here. You have literally 100 people that will help you for free. I had an instance this week.
Can they go keep them off that people's private property? Because
There's things that can be done, and CCFAW can help you with that.
But
We're just
so we've-
talking about
we've-
making sure.
We've had
that-
this for 2 months, 3 months, and it hasn't, we haven't had any.
Have they contacted
Yes, ma'am.
Pat?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Have they contacted,
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Pat and Bob
there are
Belt.
things that can be done. This week.
What are they?
I had someone come up to me about a neighbor, this isn't in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
That, he throws out sick cats, throws out dead cats. They approach him about TNR, he won't do it, yada, yada, yada. I called your animal control officer and let her know what's going on and that I was willing to go into this man's house, trap the cats, get them fixed, and he takes them back. If cats are fixed, they're not gonna cause as much problem.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing is they're not gonna multiply. If you keep taking them out of where they are, other cats are gonna come in. It's just, I feel before we have this workshop, your ACO needs to educate herself, return to field.
Well, that's
is
not gonna work. You can't educate yourself, but we'll take care of it.
I'd be more than happy to speak to her. I know.
We'll make sure she gets the
Return
training
to
as well
field
as the
is
other
not
one.
the same as TNR. If instead
We
of
understand
taking
that.
cats that aren't fixed to
Mhm.
Halifax and costing a fortune,
Right.
call me, call somebody else in your city. There's lots of us here. Take it to Redinger. We'll pick it up.
Sure.
It'll get fixed and we'll put it back.
Okay.
There is
We
a better
really
way.
would, if CCFAW would do us a favor right now and help Mr. Scheibel, that would be phenomenal. We
Well,
have
I'll get with
exhausted all
Pat.
efforts.
I don't know
so
anything
appreciate
about
it.
that situation, but
Yep.
I will
Thanks.
contact Pat.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. Who's up?
Can I just say something about Mr. Scheibel?
No? You had your bite of the apple, but you can talk to me afterwards.
Yeah, I'll talk to, I'll hear, yeah, absolutely.
We'll get with you.
Hello, thank you for allowing me to speak.
Sure.
Ms. Ford, I'm very sorry about your husband's passing. I didn't know him personally, but I have spoke at these council meetings twice, and your husband was up there, and I just felt that he had so much compassion in his heart for the cats. I knew he fed feral cats, so I just want to say a lot of these cats around here come from the citizens that live in this community that allow their animals to roam free, that rent apartments, that rent homes, and then they have to move. They dump these cats and leave them there. So here these cats are going from house to house, wanting in because they had a home at one time, but now they don't. So, and just like Pat said, they just keep reproducing and reproducing. And people look at us, the people that are out there that give our time every week, as myself, to go out there and help these cats. And I just feel like we get blamed that it's our fault that there's all these cats out there, and it's not. We're out there. I trap every week. I'm out there from 4:30 in the afternoon till 11 o'clock at night sometimes, and if I don't get cats, I'm back out there in the morning. This is my passion. These cats don't deserve what they have to deal with, and it's not right. And Mr. Tremont, I know about the little gym over there. I have trapped 95% of those cats over there. The woman that feeds there, she's not the only one. And I know they don't want the cats there, but the problem is everybody and their brother is going to continue to feed those cats. You can go in there and trap all the cats that have been fixed and take them away, but that's not going to help because people are still going to drive through that parking lot 4 or 5 times a day and dump food there. And those cats, you can take them away, but there's just going to be a whole nother colony of cats that come in there that are not fixed, that's just going to create the problem all over again. There's very few kittens there. I think there may be 2 or 3 because there's a mama cat we can't get. But I will tell you, I have been there just about every week trapping those cats, and it was out of control. The other place you're talking about, I don't know about that, but I have trapped at Target, I have trapped at Winn-Dixie and Port Orange, and you talk about I'm so sorry, I'm getting so emotional, but the things that I see when I'm out trapping, I would invite any one of you to come trap with me on a Thursday night. You want to see the homeless people that live behind Winn-Dixie, that throw their trash everywhere? There was a homeless man living in the woods for almost a year, and there were cats missing. We were finding dead raccoons, possums dead by the water. We couldn't figure out what was happening. The caregiver went in the woods, found a bungalow that this homeless man was living in with a trap on top of burnt wood. He was burning and killing the raccoons, the possums. There's cats. He had a BB gun.
Need you to wrap up.
I'm sorry, but
I know.
I'm passionate about this.
I love that you are.
And you talk about the homeless people standing on the corners panhandling for money. You need to look at these places behind Target, all of the trash there, and we get blamed for
Off
it.
subject.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Who else? If there's anybody else that wants to speak, appreciate if you'd all stand at the ready so we can keep it flowing.
Hello, thank you for allowing me to talk. My name is Darlene Kochendorfer. I live at 5571 Lancewood Drive. I've been working with CCFAW in trapping, fostering, adoption, you name it, I dabble in everything for about 2 or 3 years. I've been writing notes for years about improvements. It just seems that there's not enough of us. I think what we need to do is everybody be on the same page. I have a dozen ideas about, for better communication with the city, the way the city can communicate with their residents. People don't know about the existence of the Redinger Clinic. They don't know anything about the TNR program. A simple idea like putting it in your newsletter where the information is there. That'll open up for a world of questions and people to contact. Just a little blurb down in that corner of that little thing I get in the mailbox every couple of months. That would be helpful. The city's growing. More people are here. More cats are here. This is an animal control thing. It's a necessary thing. It's something that's managed. It's not cured. You have to manage it. Like I said, there's, giving a permanent place in the newsletter. The workshop, definitely needed. Maybe these ideas are better expressed at that.
Please bring them back, yeah,
I will.
absolutely.
Maybe special signage indicating that a colony is being cared for. That way, and here's that rogue feeder term, a lot of people will be feeding and we don't know about them.
Mhm.
If there's a sign there that says, hey, this is an established colony being cared for by so-and-so, they might be less inclined to dump a bag of cat food all over the ground and leave the mess. That's a huge problem, is the mess. And it's none of us that do that. That's something you can look into. I know the spay neuter ordinance is hard to enforce, but you know, you do have a group of probably over 100 people who are willing to go out and trap for you. You call me and say, hey, there's a problem down on Farmbrook. Can you go take a look? You know, I just picked up a colony there, and it was a resident who ended up with CCFAW to find out what they could do, and I took that colony. And today, just based on one post, 2 of my lovely neighbors are here, and they want to know how to help. So, but I'd really like to share these with Pat, and hopefully maybe attend that workshop, or at least get these ideas
See you then.
implemented.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you. Who else? Anybody
I
else?
did that on under 3 minutes. And for most
Hey,
people, you know,
you get extra credit.
That never happens.
Sir, ma'am, I got this. Pat, the lady beside you, can you yell your name and I'll read it into the record, please?
Bonnie Souter.
Bonnie Souter. Thank you.
Am I in trouble?
No, you need to state your name for the record.
Actually,
and
Jake's
your
in
head.
trouble because
Absolutely.
with the clerk because she didn't get your name, so that's Jake's fault. Because heaven knows it wasn't on me.
I'm not in trouble.
Yeah. No, you're not in trouble.
Could you spell Kochendorfer?
No.
Common spelling?
Common
To
spelling.
be honest with you, actually, I'm in trouble, but I just passed the buck. So, any other comments, Jake? Any other items?
No.
Okay. Council committee reports. First Step Shelter.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah, about a 3.5-hour meeting last night.
Give us the 30-second.
Yeah.
Good luck with that.
Give us the 30-second.
30-second one is I requested on the record a joint workshop with the city of Daytona, with the board, because there's just far too many decisions being made without our input that affect the policy, which is our job to do. So, in the interest of time, nothing new per se, but I'll keep you posted on that for sure.
That sounds eerily consistent with the News Journal article that was released a few hours ago that quoted quite a few elected officials.
Yeah, you know, you cross a hurdle, then you're taking another few steps back, and
It's pretty telling when you get Joe Forte to go on the record. Joe Forte is a pretty quiet, reserved guy, real smart. He's a doer, not a talker. And when he goes on the record the way he did, against a neighboring city like that, it's pretty telling. And and that's where I hopefully you guys can get your arms around it and actually sit. You know, it's hard when you're having so many things dictated. I hope that you guys, I think it was the right question to ask, is to be able to actually sit down and get everybody in the same room together.
well, yeah, exactly. We're on the same team. It makes sense we get on the same page, and it's a good, strong board. I think that's the most positive thing that the First Step has going for it.
Okay. Port Orange South Daytona Chamber, Thursday evening is a chamber after hours, but I don't think we're available for some reason.
Yep.
We got to work. We got a budget workshop. Thursday at noon is the Economic Development Committee is meeting at the chamber. And Roundtable of Elected Officials did not meet this month, so I have nothing to report about a meeting that did not happen. With that, anything else come before us this evening? Please say no. Okay, good. Have a good night, everybody. We'll see you Thursday.